that kind of egg that's hard to make that I can't remember the name of right now.
Well, I remember hearing bolognese being like in a lasagna, or it was in like a frozen dinner that I had when I was in Spain.
All I know is some kind of sauce.
Okay.
Might be meat based. Might be a meat based sauce. That might be where the meat comes
I think
in.
it's a meat-based sauce because I think Olive Garden for a while had like a lasagna bolognese, and it's a torrivelli or Italian trio where you get like fettuccine alfredo with a chicken parmesan breast and then just like this small square of lasagna, and it's pretty dope, especially with like chicken gnocchi.
Ooh, like me some gnocchi.
Oh yeah, it's good stuff. So we should be live and recording everywhere, so we're good to go. Um, so Brian, welcome to the parlor, Jailhouse Parlor. Um,
Thank you.
so I think I can because most people still have normal lives, and I don't want their normal lives to be trudged up by online presences, where we try to speak openly. So if you're welcome to introduce yourself, um, if you want to go forward with that one.
Sure. My name is Bryan, and you probably don't know me from anything because I'm not in things. I am, in the truest sense of the word, some internet guy.
Just a regular redditor.
I don't go on
No.
Reddit really. Well, I mean sometimes, just specific things. But
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of specific interests, and
Okay.
there's a bunch of different sites that cater to those interests, and some are better than others. So I use
Okay.
Reddit for some things, other sites for other things.
So that's entirely contrary to what I actually wrote up for you in
Oh,
the intro. I was just like, Brian's a longtime friend from back in Aaron's retail days. He's the most underrated yet to be discovered talent in voice acting.
well, maybe not that second part, but I mean that first part's true. We do go pretty far back.
Yeah, yeah. So back when
I'm not just some random internet hobo you picked out of the out of the
no,
garbage.
I can't do that. I can't do that. I try to highlight people of interest and intrigue on this specific podcast. Um, the other ones are just like I'll just grab random people and see how they mix and hope it doesn't end up in drunken squabbles in my guest bedroom and people hurting each other. Um, but with COVID now, the physical can't ever happen because everyone just gets to be angry on their side of the country. So
Yeah,
it's pretty safe.
yeah. Working from home has been. I thought I was gonna enjoy it. I was really excited to
And then
work
what
from home,
happened?
and then I had to do it. My bedroom became my office, and I despised it.
Yeah. You don't have enough. What do you live in, like a studio or a single bed?
I rent out a duplex with a couple other people, so
Oh,
I don't
okay.
have much space,
Yeah.
and basically all the space that I have is both my work and my leisure space, and it's just hard to get away from the stress at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I don't, if I had stayed at my last place, I might have gotten towards work at home. But after doing enough office work, I realized that while I found doing grocery stock clerk work, um, was way too physical, like way too physically draining, um, and just not healthy in that area. Um, Desk work was so unphysical that it left me quite anxious.
Hmm.
Um, because like I'd get in like at 10 and I swear 10 or something like that, and by like noon I was like I need to go run or do something or build a sweat and then try not to stink for the rest of the day. Um, so I think the question then for you, because I think a lot of people are actually going to hang out in this average where I don't think anyone likes to go to or be required to go to do office or go to the office every single day. Um, so do you think that if you had a spare guest room to like work out of, do you think you'd be happier about work at home?
Oh yeah, yeah. If I had a spare room, I'd definitely be a lot happier about it.
Yeah.
Um, I really though, what I miss is just I never really realized how much like going to work is the time of day that I go outside. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like I never really understood how
Like the
convenient it is to be able to stop at Publix on the way home from work
yeah.
rather than have to get myself out of bed to go to Publix.
Yeah, or like
You
how
know?
the commute like really helps you transition your mind.
Oh yeah, yeah, especially the commute. I know a lot of people don't like long drives. I love long drives. I
Yeah.
love just being able to
Yeah.
just zone out and think about stuff.
Yeah. Well, when I had my pharmacy tech job, I was way out there. I'm out in here in Winter Springs, like right by Winter Springs High School, basically. For those that want to like look up geographical locations, and I'd have to drive 1 hour one way to John Yun Sand Lake, like basically not a mile away from iDrive, basically. On I-4 of all things if I wanted to avoid tolls. And while most people are like that sucks because I-4 sucks for a lot of people, I was like I get to basically kill like a podcast like
Right.
to and from like morning and evening. While I really wish I had that time in my pocket, definitely got to take advantage of it. Do you think if you got the option to work at home and work at the office at your own whim outside of like required meetings that would be like a perfect setup for you?
Um, Probably. Um, I mean, that's a whole lot of specific privileges that I don't think someone at like my level would ever get, but
Yeah,
that would
yeah,
be nice.
yeah. But yeah, well, it's either you're such an introverted type that I'm guessing you would either love to just have a spare office and they'd never see you again at the office unless they called you, or you'd be like, you know what, I could deal with a human in-person interaction today. Let me go to the office. And
Yeah,
then,
I mean,
and
like I think like seeing your associates in person is really important for
yeah,
like being able to do your job well, depending on obviously on like exactly what it is you're doing.
yeah,
But you're right. I definitely hate people. I hate being I hate being around people, and I would probably choose to be home more often than not.
yeah, I could definitely see that, which makes it very, in my memory, makes it quite a quagmire how unfortunate it is a lot of introverts end up doing customer service.
Yeah, it's just because that's the kind of country we live in. We're in like a forced scarcity situation where really none of us have these needs,
Mm-hmm.
but they're or that they can't be filled. Rather, they can be filled super easily, but because of the way our economy is set up, it's you need to we don't have like a manufacturing industry, or at least not a large one, or one that people can really become a part of, unless you're
Yeah.
getting something like an engineering degree or something that's like higher level STEM. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like we get filtered into lower, like still potentially high. Like I don't have like a bad education, but like reasonable education getting forced downwards into service level jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and higher level education being forced upwards into those engineering jobs. And we just have this big gap in the middle
Yeah,
that like
I can see and feel what you're talking about. I think that resonates in terms of how there's a huge vat to jump into there. But I can definitely see the gap that you're talking about, especially as someone who did go get a bachelor's, but has no intention of that bachelor's, which is in business, which is nice, generally speaking. I have every intention of like using it for entrepreneurial like purposes, for helping take care of business side of productions and such. Um, but I have yet to hear a good argument against the part where it's like if you're not going into STEM, there is almost no reason to go to college these days for the
yeah.
cost and the debt and a lot of the crazy shit that's coming out of colleges these days.
And it sucks too because like, that college education is super important in our country. This is, and this, I don't know how this might be like old data now. This is something I read like 2 or 3 years ago,
Yeah.
but ostensibly that within the next 10 years we're facing a shortage of skilled labor,
Yeah,
electricians, plumbers.
I remember. Well, yeah, no, New York has that problem. It might have been the same timeline as you, but New York is actually willing to pay. Like, I think New York City is willing to pay like ridiculous money for electrical engineers or whatnot in the city. It's just that you can call it whatever reason it is with like rent control or something like that. Living in New York City is just not affordable.
Oh
Um,
yeah, 100% not.
and
But
so,
it's not even just that. But like, yeah, one, living in New York City just isn't affordable. But two, like, there just really aren't that many people going for those jobs.
no,
We
they
spent
got,
such a long amount of time telling people, don't, you have to go to college. You have to
yeah,
go to
yeah, yeah.
college.
Well, okay, so are you if you have I'm not wanting to focus on them, but have you heard of the Weinstein brothers?
Oh yeah, yeah, I know the Weinsteins.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think it's
Well, not like I know them, but you know what I mean. I know
you
of
know,
them.
you have coffee with them only on one Sunday out of the year, so like you don't know them too well.
Yeah,
Um,
they're estranged family members. So we don't.
it- Well, did you hear Eric has been trying to get some legs for a few years now on that whole sort of scheme that came out? It was during our time when we were in elementary school and up, where they're like, you must go to college, and people that graduate with high school degrees and college degrees and PhDs make X amount of money, and that was basically a giant fucking farce, and it's now massively inflated the numbers of people that are going into college for a lot of other degrees or trying to get PhDs or something like that. And that basically made all the other trade stuff unviable, and not to mention whatever's been happening in public education to kick the trades out of being in shop class like that, being kicked out of just basic K through 12 education. So now trade schools are like getting their own revival, and I'm basically trying to convince every parent and every like young adult who's like about to or is in college is like, why are you there, or why are you sending them there? What are they going for? Do they have work experience? Get them out of college right now. Like, make them go work anywhere.
Yeah.
Because it's just bullshit. I'm sorry, you're gonna walk away with a $200,000 fucking debt for a degree that's not gonna be worth anything. I if I knew of the job that I have now in pest control, I know I could have been at this job back when I started at Publix, still be here now, um, have more experience than one of the senior individuals there, um, and be making good like over 40K a year, being able to like make up my own day and my own month. It's like, because how my company works is pretty great. It's like, here's your work orders for the month, get them done. That's it. Like, welcome to the first of the month. Here's your shit. I don't care what you do the rest of the month. Once you're done.
Hmm.
It fascinates me where like this job requires nothing because they're gonna teach you everything. There's no taking. They're gonna teach you everything for the trade basically. So I just don't see where I don't see where people, unless they are gonna make the big challenge towards any of the STEM fields, why going to college at this time in history is an economic move.
Yeah, and I feel like right there at the end, you really hit on what the issue is that it's an economics issue.
Hmm.
A lot of people, um, our economy and the way that our colleges are set up is the reason why it's a problem. I
Hmm.
feel like there's a lot of people who, because you come to the right conclusion that like right now in America, you are probably more likely to live a happy and fulfilled life if you were to just get a trade skill,
Yeah.
like become a mechanic or an engineer or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not, at least in my opinion, how things should be. I If you ask me, college should just be a right, and it should be something that everyone has the opportunity to pursue.
Hmm.
I don't remember who said it, but there was somebody who was like, maybe it was like in response to like some kind of like protest or whatever, but they were like, the greatest tragedy to me is not how many Einsteins or how many people weren't born that could have become Einstein, but rather how many people out there are just as smart as Einstein, but because they live in an impoverished area, they'll never have the opportunity to achieve that greatness because they
Yeah.
don't have the opportunity for that education.
Well,
And I feel like that's what the problem
yeah.
is that these people need to have that opportunity to seek that higher education at college without bankrupting themselves.
Yeah, and I think because I think we'll agree on it. It's just a question of methodology that we're probably going to have our own discourse or discussion about. I think that also a I think there's a lack of understanding that while the internet may have everything out there, um, that self starters are even more rare. Um, I wish I knew Einstein's story better, but I think there's something to be said about Einstein level like special people and the opportunity issue. I think it's the thing is my big thing is as I'm trying to find these words, having a good university and the mentorship that should go in there of having leaders that and teachers and professors that can help teach these kids, teach any of us really, though, and take us down those paths of learning. I think it's a, I think it's a very I want to say arrogant statement that like anyone if they were really an Einstein genius would be like going online and learning all this by themselves and saving the world with their theories or something like that. And it's like no, like there needs to be channels with which people actually get proper education because I know for um, myself, and I imagine it's true for a lot, that you need to be properly introduced into certain disciplines and certain topics from someone who knows what the fuck they're talking about. I think it was a quote from someone is like true mastery of a topic. It means that you can explain exceptionally complex things in very short and simple terms. Actually,
Oh
it's
yeah,
not. It's
100%.
it doesn't require you to do like a 5 paragraph essay on a cop on a concept. It's that you can actually make it simple, even though there could be a 10 page study on it to fully explain it.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. It's like it's just like those higher level ideas and concepts. They're just not things that one can teach oneself. There
No.
are very, very rarely some beyond exceptional individuals
Yeah.
that can.
Yeah.
Um, like there's this one guy. I wish I could remember his name. He's absolutely fascinating, but he might have passed away now. He's an older gentleman,
hmm
if not. But he's from India, and he was like this
I think we're thinking
math
of the same person, right?
genius.
Yeah, he created trigonometry in his own isolated situation,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he wrote that journal that the rest of the math world is still trying to figure out,
yeah,
and they're going
yes,
through it. Like I forget who it might have been Jeremy Irons or something like that, who was the actor that was the British professor that was his mentor through letter writing or something like that.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I
I do
think
know the guy was eventually like they brought him to Cambridge
yeah,
in the UK, not in the US.
yeah, I believe he
And like that's
has
where like
yeah,
his story really started. But like that's very rare. They have this actual literal genius.
yeah,
But even he, once they brought him to an actual university and gave him the means to actually pursue these academic ideas,
yeah,
that's when it exploded. So you got to
yeah.
ask yourself, this guy who got discovered when he was like in his 20s, how much better would he have been had he been fostered from a young age in
Yeah,
an
so I think
educational facility?
I think that's where we go back to the point of I believe we're we're much more concerned or we can agree on trying to make sure the opportunity is there. Um, and the only thing that I have a critique against people when it comes to healthcare education is turning everything into a right. I believe that should be, and I think we can agree on this concept of we should be providing as much opportunity as possible for everything, from business to education to family plans and the like. Um, my only critique on is just if you're turning everything into a right, I think it creates a certain dialogue that has led to a lot of entitlement. So that's just like my one sort of critique to have on that. I think that right now our colleges are overpriced and way below the value that they're priced at and way below the value that they should be at on a standard average if you look backwards because of just how regressive they've been by trying to teach the lowest common denominator. So no one's being challenged. There's no critical thought, and everyone has to succeed or get their degree. Um, and so the quality has just failed.
I mean, I will definitely say there are some. The problem is both of us what we're familiar with is the American education system, which is like the worst education system in the country.
Yeah,
We're not even like top 10.
yeah. No, we're in Florida. We're
Like
fighting to get to the
there's
bottom over here. Like,
oh yeah, in Florida specifically, you got fucking places like Botswana like miles ahead of us.
yeah,
like we're way down there. So the actual, but I'm not a teacher. I'm not studied in that. So the actual literal methodologies and stuff I'm going to argue for or against. However, I don't like looking at education as like a right to have or not to have. For me, it's a right to access. That's
yeah,
the problem.
yeah, yeah,
Everyone should have a right to access
yeah,
that higher level education.
yeah.
So like I don't feel like colleges and universities should be profit driven. I know a lot of people do, and there's some argumentation for that,
Uh
but
huh.
unfortunately, historically, the profit driven ones have been the ones that have done worse overall,
Uh
both
huh.
for themselves and for their students, because
Yeah.
the profit motive has a different desired outcome
hmm
than just a learning motive.
Yeah.
right? There's a reason why in the United States college football teams are so important to colleges and why they spend so much money getting good football players. It's because they make so much more money off of college football than they do anything academic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So like
Well,
there's you got to look at the goal, what people are trying to achieve, and what people want. You have to separate that to the correct framework in order to actually achieve that goal. And unfortunately, a profit motive framework, that is a hard word to say
mhm.
or phrase, a profit motive framework just doesn't work as well for education because it doesn't care what the quality of the education is. The
Okay.
quality of the education you get could be great, could be garbage. They're still making the same amount of money off of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it
So
can be. It can be. It's just I think it comes down to, and are we talking on the public education or college education for a profit
I'm
motive
talking about
design?
college education,
Hmm.
mostly because what my argument would be is that the profit motive education that our colleges have should instead be structured like the way that our um, our local schools are. Not 100%. There's also a whole lot of problems with how our local schools are budgeted, but that's because most of that has to do with it's based on like property taxes and shit like that. So if you live in a bad neighborhood, the schools are going to get less money. The school's going to get less money. The kids are going to do worse, which means the neighborhood's going to get worse, and it's a vicious
Yeah, yeah,
circle
yeah.
that
I want
feeds
to go
into
down on that
itself.
one later, because I've heard of the I forget what it's called. It's a, tax. I want to say coupon for some reason, or a voucher. That's what it was. Because I've heard that suggested, for the for the public school system, for at least K through 12. Um, so it fascinates me, or at least in the theory, and I'd like to actually see if there's any research or study with this for the for-profit versus non-profit, I guess state um, colleges, because I think it goes back to a question of what's supporting it. Because my fear with nonprofit things or things that are governmental or bureaucratic is that there's no competition against that structure that's going to eliminate it should it be providing a bad product. Um, so like it's a curiosity to me that do these for-profit businesses that are schools, that are universities, do they not fail like they should in the market because they are just given this level of significance that makes them established and immovable? Um, is it that their product isn't made clear to be bad, so they don't improve upon it or they don't fail on the market? Um, that's sort of my questioning about like why aren't market principles or market demands um, equating to a success failure um, of the products that they're providing. Do the contracts that they sort of bind their students in end up with like, yeah, we have a graduation rate and we have, like it's hard to perhaps suggest or have, or it to be made clear what's success for a university. And that's where all we have is like graduation rates, the profitability off of their sports programs, and maybe like the number of papers that they put out, whether or not any of those are of actual quality or value um, to the culture, to the country, to the people.
See, the problem with it is that in a normal marketplace, and if we're looking at the university as the producer or the manufacturer,
Yeah,
the manufacturer is getting paid by their customers for their good based on the
yeah,
quality of that good.
yeah,
Um, no one is paying universities for the quality of their good. The good the university produces is an educated and skilled worker. That worker is then going to get paid by the business that
yeah,
hires them based off their skill set.
yeah.
Because of that, there is no normal or
Quality
typical.
control.
Yeah, because no one's gonna call up friggin' University of Central Florida and be like, I hired Jim Johnson
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah, yeah,
2010, and that son of a bitch didn't know anything.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that
Because
doesn't happen.
so to draw that line and another thing, because I'm having the drugstore as a thing. If the drugstore is providing 100 different items, but like two of them are bad, people are gonna let the drugstore know, or they're gonna let each other know that hey, this drug is bad and it's not selling. Um, and so it's a it's a very distinct like okay, we're not gonna provide that product anymore, but that's a direct thing between the customer and the drugstore. There's not that middle piece, which in the university situation is the employee that or the graduate that's trying to find work. So the graduate ends up with a bad education, potentially debt, or at least a lot of time and money spent, and they don't have any of the skills or knowledge able to actually even get them what they want. And the whole purpose usually of going to university, unless you're trying to be a career um, intellectual, so to speak, in research and stuff, or a professor, is to then find a job in the workforce.
Yeah,
Um,
but that none of that finding a job in the workforce that doesn't come back and inform the university on how well it's doing
yeah,
because there's that 1 degree of separation. Instead, what the
yeah,
university gets that feedback on is how well is your college football team doing, or did you have a big name person graduate from your university? More often than not, like rather than actual graduation rates or like success after school, a
yeah,
lot of what universities are known for is, hey, this famous director graduated from this school.
yeah,
Because people, unfortunately, are not very smart. It would be very. That's the thing with like, with every so like I'm not necessarily like capitalism is absolute garbage, can't use it for anything, but there are definitely certain products or services that just really don't work in that kind of framing, like electricity. You just need electricity, and you need like a very specific amount of electricity. That
yeah,
need is never going to change,
yeah.
so that it just makes sense for that to be a subsidized commodity. Like, okay, well, it's not really. I
Well,
mean, really, it
that's
shouldn't be for profit at all. But
it's yeah,
it's like because there's no. It's not like, oh, the electricity I got was bad electricity. Like, it's just electricity. You got it or you didn't get it.
yeah. Well, the
You know what I
question
mean?
then comes down to like reliability. I think we're sort of in we could actually have that discussion a bit about how internet service is very monopolized, but it might as well be a utility service at this point. Um,
Oh yeah, because
and
its
but you have
monopolization
a
is
you have
keeping it from advancing too.
yeah,
It's not even just like, there's the monopoly and they're cutthroat trying to get the best possible internet. No, they're all in it together. They
yeah,
all understand. No one's like the reason that like fiber optic cable hasn't taken the country by storm has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that it's not better and everything to do with the fact that it's very expensive and none of them want to be the first person to spend
yeah,
that money. They want
yeah.
someone else to spend the money so they can use the framework that that person created in order to have the better product without spending the money to get it. And
Hmm.
that's why it's an issue because we're not talking about like drugs or like food. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I can make a better tiramisu than you and sell that and make more money. But
yeah.
like electricity just is electricity. It's, are you getting it? Yes, satisfied. Are you not getting it? No, not satisfied.
Well, that's where electricity and internet is not even. It's not an in-store product, so to speak. That you would go and like make a decision on it.
Yeah.
Every Saturday when you go grocery shopping. Uh, Electricity and internet. It's like, where's the provider? What's and is there?
Yeah.
There's not even like.
Do I even have a second provider as a choice?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. That's where Comcast or whatnot or Spectrum now is like the big fucking name in internet, and it's garbage. It's been garbage through all COVID because the system wasn't built for this level of demand. Um, but it's like you either have like you go, at least for where I'm at, I have like AT&T and Spectrum. Those are like the two options that I have. Um, and so it's like I think this is where, in my mind, the needs from government aren't even to make these things public entities, but I really wish that there is a much more active antitrust part of the government arm right now, because I think it would actually I think it would probably, everything's always a trade-off, but I feel like if there is a more active antitrust situation going on, it might stimulate more competition or growth. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed solve, but
What is it? That's always the problem though with antitrust stuff is that you're looking for a legal solution
mhm.
to a systemic problem,
Yeah,
and that's just usually that's so much harder to find because like what does the antitrust do? Oh, we require at least three valid options for internet in this area. Okay, cool. Well, you number one, me number two, and you number three. How about all of us with the money we have just buy up all that area, and then
yeah,
we just split it the way we want?
yeah, and we
You know
just
what I mean?
agree how it
There's
goes. Yeah,
It's so easy to come up with,
non-competitive stuff that
yeah, non-competitive competition.
yeah, and they just weasel their way around the laws. That's where
Yeah.
it's kind of like, what's the systemic solve? Because I don't exactly trust government entities to be very innovative.
Oh, see, that's the thing. That is a fallacy. I disagree with that entirely.
Hmm.
It's very easy to look at the government and say that, oh, they're a bunch of fucking idiots. They don't know what they're doing. It's because politicians are a bunch of idiots that don't know what they're doing. Actual government workers and people hired are just as effective and just as good as workers in any other company.
Okay,
Just
well
like
then,
period, bar none. Because there's no difference between a government hired electrician and a private contractor electrician. But the only difference there is that the government contracted electrician who's going out and doing the work isn't worried about his profit motive, whereas the other gun is. And for certain situations, especially when you're looking at like top level businesses or
hmm
like starting out businesses,
hmm
obviously that's a huge incentive for growth. But we're talking about industries that, like electricity has a hard cap on demand. There's not like the amount of electricity a country needs is the amount of electricity it needs. There's no, oh, we've decided we want a little bit more, a little bit less. You need as much as you need.
yeah,
Period. It's a hard. There's no elasticity there.
mm,
So when you that's why those things with no electricity are so much better as governmental programs, because then you can, all you need to solve for is how much you need to produce, right? The electrician who goes to your house and sets up your stuff doesn't care. He does not care whether he works for the government or not. It doesn't matter to him. He's doing his job, right? That's the thing. So many people are so quick to jump on like, oh, the government's all full of politicians and all politicians are corrupt idiots. Yes, all politicians are corrupt idiots, but the government is not made up of all politicians. Politicians are the face that we see of the government, but the
hmm.
majority of the government is just other workers.
Well,
And a lot of the problems with governmental systems and those programs that do fail is because they're set up to fail. You know
yeah,
what the best way as a politician to prove to the people that you're right and we can't do X or Y is to allow us to try X or Y and sabotage it so that it fails.
yeah, yeah,
It's very easy to cut a program's budget by 300% or whatever, and
hmm,
have no one see that because it got passed in like a friggin' tax bill that no one cared about,
yeah,
rather
some,
than to argue on the floor, no, we shouldn't do this because it's bad.
yeah, pork barrel.
It's all people. This is my biggest issue. People just need to stop worrying about politicians and start worrying about the problems, one, and the solutions, two. Period. Fuck
Yeah,
the politicians. Forget them. It doesn't matter. Who cares? They could be super nice, and that's great. That does not mean that they're smart.
yeah,
Don't vote for people that you like because you like the way they talk or the way they look. Vote for people who are said, hey, this is the problem. This is my proposed solution. And then you analyze that solution. And if it works, then you vote. Don't
yeah.
don't
Well,
do
it's
dumb shit.
I think that's where we agree on like what's the results of well executed programs, or at least well
Yeah.
executed, or at least policy that's set up. Um,
Because like going back to the education example, if
hmm.
we if we because if we want to actually talk numbers, Germany, um, I don't know if Germany's higher level education is 100% government funded or if it's like percentile,
Hold on.
but
Who the
the
fuck has been
cost
blowing up
of
my
a
fucking phone? Fucking telemarketer bullshit. Nothing important. Nothing important. Okay,
all
cool.
right, but the cost for a degree in Germany, like a 4-year degree,
Hmm.
significantly smaller than the United States, and no one is going to look me in the eyes and tell me that Germany's colleges are bad. Like or
No,
like
no.
Germany is
Well,
behind Japan in automobile manufacturing, and it's only because Japan like fucking it just has really good engineers. Their engineers are just
yeah,
slightly better than the engineers coming out of Germany.
yeah.
But Germany has this. It's $280 a semester for college
Well,
in Germany compared to
isn't government isn't and this is where I think this is the actual draw between, and it might be more complicated than that, is that the colleges and universities in Germany are those are subsidized primarily by the government, like almost entirely in taxes over there, right?
I believe so. I don't know exactly what like 100% where the money comes from, but I do know that it is subsidized at least significantly. Because again,
Yeah,
it's we're looking at like what $20,000 a semester in like a mid-range U.S.
yeah,
school for four
yeah.
year versus $280 American
And
to get
well,
a 4-year degree in
yeah,
Germany.
yeah. So that's where we need to start compare. We need to start figuring out what categories these things are alike and disalike. And I'm not expecting either of us to have the answers, but like, are the German universities, are those state universities, are those for-profit universities, public, private? How much
Public,
of the public?
yeah, they're public. And across all, if I'm reading this right, across the 16 states of Germany, they've abolished all tuition fees for undergraduate students entirely.
Well, that's a fun fact in terms of the economics of it for the consumer, so to speak. it's a question of like, are these for-profit universities? Does public mean for-profit? Just to like get the vocabulary squared up.
Not necessarily. Technically, a university could be for profit, in like another way,
Mm-hmm.
is it rather than just saying straight up nonprofit. But the so I guess it's important to specify when I talk about I want universities to be nonprofit, I mean based off of tuition. I
Yeah, yeah,
want
yeah, yeah.
any
Not
profit motive for
yeah.
a university to have
Profitability. I
nothing to
think
do with the students.
I'm very scared of any dialogue that equates profitability or profit as a
Because like
goal of
I
any
don't,
kind being
if a
demonized.
university decides that they want to have a football team because it makes the money, cool, whatever. I don't give a
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, yeah.
But the problem
Merchandise.
is when
Yeah.
that ends up,
Going into
because what
tuition.
happens and what we see it, yeah, in the United States is that basically the tuition is an additional tax put on you and the student to
Yeah.
subsidize the school's football team.
Well, that's the gap or the mix-up that I think is contributing to, or some. I think that's a lot. I think the impression that I get, and this is why I'm trying to ask these questions, is that the tuition and perhaps even cultural methods in how Germany has its university system is that a lot of the tuition or the cost of university is being taken care of by the taxes, and perhaps something is preventing, but as opposed, and so that means that the amount you have to put in to pay for the tuition as the student is so fucking low, the $200 or whatnot. While over in the U.S., we have nothing like that. We have instead the subsidized loans, which means that the colleges and universities here actually they just get to hike up their tuition cost
Yep.
and make huge bank off of it because it's not the same kind of subsidizing from the government.
Yes, it's literally reversed in our case, where our because our government is subsidizing the student and not the university.
Yeah,
That means that
the
the
university is
government
not.
gets
Yeah,
no say.
yeah,
It's no say in what the price is. And the university can just go, oh well, how much can we charge and still have capacity in
yeah.
students? And like most colleges in the United States function at capacity, like so they're not like
Oh,
honestly,
I
just coming
think
at it straight from a business perspective, they could probably be overcharging even more and still get away with it.
yeah,
Because again, it's a you need that education. You either get that higher level education, preferably in a STEM field, so you can actually be successful, or you go in and get in a higher level education in something that's not as successful, and you go work fast food with the bill, or you just choose to go work fast food without the bill.
yeah,
Or you're smart and you go to trade school, but that's a whole different issue in the United States. Our trade schools are also not particularly great, but a lot of that has to do with, like you said, the large propaganda machine of you have to go to college, otherwise you're an unsuccessful person
well,
from the
it's.
50s to
I
the
imagine there are other
90s.
sources or causes of it, but I imagine the reason the trade schools aren't that good is because they're not that well developed because they haven't been. It
Yeah.
goes between they haven't been around long enough, and you need
Well, I
high.
mean, even if you just look at it just on the way they're set up, trade schools don't have football teams.
No,
They're not getting that money from having a football team. The trade schools aren't supported by the government. They're not getting, not necessarily that are private universities are actually supported by the government, but the students are getting money from the government to go to those institutions. So technically, that money is still going to the schools. That is not happening for trade school.
yeah,
The most trade schools get is that certain companies will pay for your trade school degree if you get hired before you have the degree. So
yeah,
that's
and you
like
work
it.
for them for a set amount of time, which is a good gig, which is a good gig,
Yeah,
I
but
would
you
say.
you compare that to like the absolute plethora of options for going to a normal college and the number of ways that normal colleges have to generate income that trade skills schools don't. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
So then that's where, as I remember hearing that like part of the reason that they pay so damn much outside of the profitability is that it's also like you have to try to attract students for frankly entertainment reasons, but also it's incredibly hard to provide a good financial incentive to get high level professors or people in the industry to come in and teach when it's they have way these people, these professionals, these people that could be professors have way better options out in the market uh, to for their services and their skills. Like it's way
Yeah.
better for them financially to go get a job in the oil company or in tech or at a law firm or something corporate than to go teach.
Yeah. But now let's like imagine for a second that
Hmm.
instead our private universities are public universities and those individuals in the community that we're trying to attract to teach, instead of it just being, hey, here's your measly teacher's salary from the university, it's hey, here's your still probably measly salary, but also your government benefits and your tax deductions and
Hmm.
your whatever, all the other bonuses you get for being a government employee. Like it's
Like, are those real
like
right now, or they're just not offered at this time?
what do you mean, like from the private
I
universities?
couldn't grasp what you were saying right there. Whether
So
that,
generally
whether
speaking,
is that a current
private.
offer, or is that an offer that should be added?
No, I'm saying like imagine a scenario where our universities have been turned into public universities,
Uh huh.
and this is what it looks like
Hmm.
instead. Because like right now, most universities for their professors, unless you have tenure, which is really hard to get in
Yeah.
and of itself, you get paid shit, you get paid dog shit,
Hmm.
and you don't get any benefits at all.
Yeah.
Like
Well, you've
you don't
also
even have
been.
like a guarantee of continued work
Yeah.
because they usually hire you on for single semesters as like a contractor, so you're not even actually an employee, and you get no employee benefits.
Yeah. Not a lot of universities have a fellow system, which I'm just learning exists in certain places.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that's important to say. Obviously, I'm talking like I'm painting with a large brush. There are obviously going to be universities in the United States that are good. Like I'm not trying to say that they're all bad. I'm just talking about changing the system that we have to make them better. 'Cause
Hmm.
that's the problem is that, especially because like when you're talking about education, people are like, oh, free college or whatever. Oh, we can't afford it or whatever. It's like every single dollar we put into our universities gets back 10, 20, $30 down the road. It's a problem with
That's
investing now
if
to
that's
reap the
in
benefits later.
yes, if that's in studies and disciplines that provide real value.
Oh,
Um,
not even just the ones that provide real value. I'm talking like even if you're just going in for like a hospitality degree,
mhm.
you got to think like
Well,
look at
I
the
still
difference.
would
Just say
think.
you have someone who owns a hotel who went to school for 4 years, and someone who owns a hotel who never went to school for owning a hotel.
Yeah,
One of
yeah.
those two people is going to be slightly better at their job.
Well, in
But
the in
that
that
one person is one person out of the hundreds of thousands getting pumped out of the university. And those hundreds of thousands of people going into the workplace, if they say even one student saves $1 a year because they're better trained coming out of the university, that saves millions over the course of 10,
yeah,
20,
yeah,
30
yeah,
years.
yeah. Classic
You know, it's
TVM.
a yeah, it's literally just an argument out of the weight of numbers. Like
Yeah.
it's how much $1 put into a university affects the education of those students, and how many students it affects just multiplies it. It just gets so much better, so much quicker.
Well,
Whereas if you just were looking at like, oh well, let's invest in any of the other dumb shit that we spend so much of our money on in this country, like weapons, more weapons. We already have the best military in the United States. You know what we need to do? We need to have a better domestic system, right? Our problem isn't our military. We can fuck up pretty much anyone like one on one. Period. In the entire world, that's not an issue, right? The problem is that our domestic situation is completely screwed. Our like the roads, sewers, bridges, buildings. We need our infrastructure to be fixed. We need to actually have a good, strong at home economy because right now we don't. Our economy is still based off the 1950s. Everyone's in the middle class and has a reasonable amount of expendable income, but we don't have that expendable income anymore. So it's going to happen as time goes on. Our universities become more and more out of reach as that gap widens. We have less and less people having those degrees, meaning we have less and less engineers, we have less and less doctors, and we're relying more and more on foreign countries for our skilled labor. And that is extremely dangerous because that puts all the power in the hands of those other countries. So, like, let's say, for whatever reason, India and China, a lot of our doctors and engineers come from India and China in this country because we don't put that many out of our universities because our universities are 10 to 20 times more expensive than most other colleges. So instead, out of India, where they actually have a really good educational system, at least for India, comparatively better than ours, you get so many doctors and engineers. Same out of China, so many doctors and engineers, and they come here because they can make money here. But the problem is, if there's like just an embargo from their home countries or whatever, what are those people going to do? Right? Like if I'm from India and I'm told, hey, India's at war with the United States now, or whatever, we don't like them, whatever reason you want to come up with, we're stopping all flights to and from the United States. I'm gonna go back home to my family. I'm a fucking doctor. I can make money in India as I can over here in the United States. I'm gonna go be with my family, the people I love and care about. If I didn't bring them over here with me, which most people don't when they do that kind of stuff. Like I work in a neurology clinic. I know a lot of doctors. Several of the doctors that I know before the pandemic did exactly that. We have a doctor who went home to his family in Turkey. He's living with them there now. He's just doing stuff over the internet. So we get in this situation where our strength as a country, it doesn't matter how good our military is. Other countries can fuck us with non-military actions because our economy is so based off of the things that they're producing. It's the
yeah.
same way like how we're so heavily dependent on Saudi Arabia for their oil because of the fact that we refuse to transition to more renewable fuel sources. We're refusing to transition because we have American-based oil companies that make a shit ton of money, But that means all it takes is Saudi Arabia saying, "Hey, yeah, tough shit, no oil for 2 years," and whoop, there we go.
Now we
We're
have to.
fucked.
Now we're on the back foot, and we have to like start really. Well, that is a very legitimate batch of issues, and that's where I think I'm very curious to see what happens with the UK, with their Brexit, um, because it's either going to crash the hell out of the UK or it's going to basically make them switch into a very self-sustaining country.
They're gonna be fucked. They're not. They can't self-sustain.
Well, not if their own resources. I mean, Japan's a very resourceless country, but there is a book going out that was talking about how trust is. If you have trust, that's the most important like economic resources that you can have.
Yeah. The problem is that they don't, with the UK specifically, it's just that they don't have the infrastructure to be able to actually support like a producer style economy. Like an argument can be made for over here in the United States that it'd be easy for us to transition because we have so much more land that we can actually use for production.
Yeah.
But like, where the fuck are you going to open up a car manufacturing place in the UK? Like, where are you going to do it? There's no fucking, like, I can point to miles and hundreds of thousands of miles of just open United States land that can be
Yeah.
used for whatever. Can't fucking do that in the UK. It's three small islands. Like,
Yeah.
they physically don't have the space. I don't
Well,
know a whole hell of a lot about like
you
European
you'd still have to
economies,
run
but
the you can run UK versus Japan in terms of what they've both been able to do economically, technologically, and manufacturingly, even though they don't exactly have the space for it.
yeah, but that's the thing is that Japan. So Japan's whole technological revolution or whatever, it was all post World War II, and it was literally everyone, or not everyone, but the movers and shakers in Japan had a meeting and were like, listen, if we don't catch up, and not just catch up, but get farther ahead than everyone else, we're fucked. So go figure out find the best countries, figure out what they're doing, and we're just going to copy that. And they did. Then they created an infrastructure from the bottom up saying, hey, we understand we can't supply these things, but we're going to make those supply chains and those inroads to be able to get those things that we need, to get them cheap, and to be able to actually pull this off. What you have in the UK with Brexit is the exact opposite. They went from having an infrastructure dedicated entirely to being able to function within the EU and getting those materials and things from their allies. And the EU was a huge boon for that because it meant no more, no tariffs, or at least not nearly as large, much more easy travel, much easier to actually do business. And then they're just getting rid of that entire like ease of actually pulling it off part with Brexit, but leaving the infrastructure that can't actually support itself.
I remember hearing the complaint that the a lot of at least EU members are having is that they're basically having to foot the bill for other countries that, like for Greece, for example, over relies on tourism, get themselves caught up, have a bad culture of debt, and thinking the government's just going to take care of their every issue. So a lot of the complaints that are happening with the EU is going into like the more successful countries like Germany or Britain end up having to just babysit and take care of the financial dependencies of the other countries that just aren't. Um, they don't have as I would say they don't have as successful of a culture of hard work and
Ooh, no,
innovation.
I have to disagree with that entirely because that's a do not use cultural differences for what can be explained by material means. Like because Greece, for
You can
instance,
run a cultural difference between Japan and the rest in terms of Japan's culture says we have no material means in terms of resources, and now they're leading the fucking world.
yeah, but that's again, that's because of a specific governmental system that they chose to enact in Japan, right? So Greece and whatever. So if we want, again, I'm not huge specifically on the UK politics. So if
Oh,
someone
I'm
out
not
there is like,
either.
I'm
I'm
from
just
Greece and
yeah.
Greece is a fucking shithole, well, congratulations, buddy. But um, it's so the EU was attempting to create the United States, but
Mm-hmm.
just over there with a bunch of different states.
Mm-hmm.
We, being in the United States, we're so keen to look at the EU member states as different nations because they are different nations,
Mm-hmm.
but they're equivalent to the United States. Texas is bigger than I think the entirety of the
Just
EU.
about. Yeah, Germany is like a couple of like colonial states
Yeah.
basically. Like
But we work and we are happy to subsidize our worse off states or states that produce less because of the fact that we have a governmental body that's set up that understands that our states are going to be better or worse at specific things and makes laws in order to actually have that harmony between us. The problem with the EU is they had a whole bunch of different member governments that each run themselves independently. So if you have a country that's doing stuff that's fucked up or whatever, and that they are like draining the pocketbooks because they have bad policies, because the EU wasn't its own governmental body,
Yeah.
really, you couldn't be like, hey, Germany, fuck you, you can't do that anymore. You got to stop.
Yeah,
Take
well,
the
they
bat out.
lack the federal level of power, so to speak, in terms of a
Yeah.
parallel
So that to me is an argument against the EU as it
structurally
was
in terms of how
drafted,
it's and
but not in terms of like, oh well, fuck you, got mine. You know what I mean? Because like looking at Greece, it's very easy. Like I obviously whatever they were doing was not correct, but those are things that can be fixed with policy. And the problem was that the UK looked at that and was like, yeah, it can be fixed with policy, but Greece is the one that has to make that policy, and we can't make that policy. And they
yeah.
viewed that as unfair, which that perfectly fine to view that as unfair. I as the person in the United States who, because the fact that I live in a populous state means that my vote is worth 1/3 of that of someone who lives in Rhode Island, I can understand, being screwed over by a smaller state kind of sucks. But again, Britain didn't think a whole hell of a lot through of how they were going to do the Brexit, and that's why it's becoming an issue. Had they thought it all out ahead of time and been like, "Yep, this is the plan, and it's going to work like this, and we're going to do it in this many years," probably wouldn't be even any issue at all. Obviously, you'd have some people saying, "Hey, United Europe is probably still better than a non-United Europe in terms of safety," but the problem is coming up because they didn't think about the ramifications of the decision they were doing before they put it up to a vote, because they assumed it wasn't going to pass, and then it did.
Yeah, I remember hearing about like all the people that were supporting it. Basically, they just disappeared because they basically couldn't believe that it actually happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Even the people that like, I was reading something the other day that was hilarious because about this couple that was like retiring in Brussels, Germany,
Hmm.
and they were pissed because they're losing their house because they're no longer EU citizens, so they can't live there anymore. They'd be illegal immigrants, and they were bullshit at Germany for allowing that to happen. And it's like, buddy, you voted to leave. Like, I don't know what you want. That was your choice.
Oh, it's one.
Did poor baby not understand the ramifications of their decision? Like,
Yeah, I think I I feel like there's a lot of laziness that's gone on in the West where personal responsibility has been taken so for granted, or like not even personal responsibility. It's one of those where the individual has gotten valued so much that the individual has become very irresponsible about how it lives its life and does its business.
oh yeah, don't even get me started on like the fucking mask shit. Like, Jesus Christ, it just blows my mind how stupid people can be sometimes. You just
Well,
like
well,
you
I guess
can.
the question is, are you pro mask or anti mask?
I am pro doing things that doctors say. And I am pro using my eyes and
Hmm.
being able to look at a situation and understand what's happening. Because like this is the thing. It's not a debate. It's not an argument. Pro mask, anti mask. Do the masks work? Do they not work? Do they cut off your oxygen? Do you know how large a an oxygen particle is? I can look this up if you don't, and I fucking will. But a particle of oxygen is like 1/1000th, if not more so, the size of a coronavirus particle. It's
Hmm.
fucking super tiny. It
Hmm.
is very small.
Hmm.
And those masks are designed as such to be able to allow that through, but not larger particles. Like how masks normally work. So the fact that these people are like, the masks don't work because they can't keep out the virus, but at the same time, the masks don't work because they keep out oxygen. It's like, you can't, it's not, it's just people not understanding what they're talking about. Like, it's so simple. It's how big is the hole, right? Like the hole is large enough to let oxygen in. The hole is not large enough to let coronavirus in. Holy shit!
Hmm.
Like you can get some blocks and you can recreate this experiment. you can show yourself.
Yeah. No, I'm just looking it up now because there's been this back and forth on a lot of the stuff as COVID is gone, and now it's actually like, was it press release July 14th? CDC calls on Americans to wear masks to prevent COVID-19 spread. So now that's finally out. So a lot of I'm curious to see what some of the conservatives that I just follow, just to see what they're saying, how they're going to react to this news release, because it's their big gripe has been the back and forth from at least the WHO and the media on whether or not masks work, if they work, if they don't work, put them on, don't put them on. Um, the effectiveness of just these cloth masks that aren't even the proper rating to block the virus itself, because the virus
Yeah.
is
Now that is a legitimate concern because there are companies that are making masks that are absolutely not healthcare level
Oh
at
yeah, well
all.
people are going
Yeah.
around just buying these cloth ones, like the ones that we got at the airport. Like at some point you're wearing these masks just to not deal with a confrontation of people like, why aren't you wearing your
Yeah.
masks? Like if I had, unless you have a medical mask to give me or a medically effective mask, I'm not about to. We're wasting our time here. We're dealing with a social cultural pressure at this point.
Yeah. But so like the thing for me, and I work in healthcare now.
Hmm.
I work at a neurology clinic, so like this is actual stuff that like I know from doctors,
Yeah,
like actual doctors that like are doctors and do doctor stuff like as their job. I don't know. It's a hard like it's so easy for someone to be like, oh, I'm a doctor, and it's like, oh, cool, you've got your doctorate in like social sciences, like
hmm,
nondescript, nothing specific, and you're gonna use that to pretend that you know something about healthcare. So I'm talking about actual healthcare doctors, um, and like even at the start, they were like, "Yeah, people should be wearing masks, not to protect themselves, but to protect others,
yeah,
because that's the whole point.
yeah.
The idea is
It's a
not
prevention
that
of the exhale, not the inhale.
exactly
Yeah,
that like that's the reason why doctors wear masks, not because they're like, oh, you're sick and I'll get sick. No, it's because if the doctor has like if you're dealing with someone with a compromised immune system and you have anything that is fine for you to have, it
yeah,
might kill the other person.
yeah,
That's why people are like, hey, wear masks. It has nothing to do with protecting you. It has nothing to do with protecting the person you're handing the cash to. It has to do with everyone else. Because normal exhalation or whatever, it can go up to like 12 feet, virus particles and shit like that. With
yeah,
the mask, it's significantly reduced. Is the mask perfect? No. Otherwise, we'd be able to get rid of the virus like in a day. But it helps other people not die. And if I have to spend $10 and inconvenience myself to save a single life, fuck, man, I don't know. I think that's a good. I think that's a good deal. I'd spend $10 if it meant someone didn't die. Yeah, okay, give me that button. I'll press that button all day.
mm.
But it's just man, people are like freaking out about it, and they're like making big scenes in front of like grocery stores and whatever, and it just blows my like. I don't. It has to be an ego thing. You know what I mean? These people had to have convinced themselves that the masks don't do anything at the start, and now they just have to double down. like,
Well, I
like
think
it.
there's an equivocal. They're making an equivocation between COVID and the regular flu, because at this point the COVID-19 appears to be similar to the flu in terms of its own death rate. I mean, there's what was it Worldometers puts out its own comparison between New York, California, Texas, Florida, and like Connecticut on death numbers, and then you do like deaths per million, and the crazy fucking Florida and Texas states are actually doing better per million in terms of the death rate, the mortality rate, than California and New York that are going between like lockdowns or something like that, or at least they had lockdown. Well, everyone did have lockdown, but Florida's been like really wide open, and Texas was it Texas and Florida, and I think Georgia might have had the more Swedish um, methodology, while California, New York, and others had very different approaches.
Yeah. The problem with that is that we don't. I mean, like, I don't want to say we don't care about the death rate as if I don't care about the people who die. Obviously, I care about the people who died. I wish the death rate was zero. But the problem with a pandemic like this is not that the death rate itself is going to be particularly high; it's the infection rate.
Hmm.
Because like people die from the flu as
Hmm.
well. Like the flu kills people.
Well, we're
Problem
concerned with
is
the
that you
infection
don't
rate
have
because of
15,000 new cases of the flu every day.
yeah. Well, I think to point out the infection rates very concerning. I think Brett made a good highlight of this is that if the infection rate gets too high and the virus gets too widespread, its ability to mutate and then become just a permanent part of the human future history, like influenza is,
Oh
there's
yeah.
no getting rid of it, basically.
Yeah, no, 100%. That and this one in particular also has been mutating like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like I believe already it can now certain strains of it can affect dogs and cats.
Hmm.
Like if like imagine like a human transferable strain of the virus got into the stray cat population.
Oh, done.
We'd never get rid of it. It'd be impossible.
Yeah.
like we'd have to have weekly cat hunts. It'd be ridiculous.
Yeah. So,
But
well, I'm sorry to all my cat lovers, but there
yeah,
are
I mean, no, I don't. That's not a situation I want.
yeah.
That's the bad end. So if you didn't get it, but
So like I wish we had a professional or you could message me later on this one. My cure is influenza. Is does that jump species? The regular flu.
I have no idea. I don't
Like
think it
so like
does.
my idea, my thought wave is as we look at like as COVID as the example, basically. If we were all to actually properly have a full like what was it, Korea or Singapore level lockdown, to where like you're getting arrested or whatnot if you like leave the house. If we had that level of lockdown for the whole country for like 4 weeks, like mad neutralization of COVID um, is the outcome, is the presumed outcome of a proper lockdown. So I'm sitting there going, why aren't we doing this with the flu? Like if the flu, unless the flu has a much longer lifespan, or it sticks around longer in the human body, it's
Well, it's
like,
just that the
how come every
as far
10
as
years we
I
don't have like a giant lockdown of the entire country for like a month just to like kill off a bunch of shit?
so the
Like I know economically
primarily
it's
I'm
ridiculous.
not obviously I'm not an expert on it, but I believe primarily it's because of the infection rate. The
Hmm.
flu does not have a high enough infection rate. And also the fact that like people who have these common illnesses then do usually self
Medicate.
isolate.
Yeah.
So like someone who gets the flu, you're not going to work when you have the flu. You're taking those 2 weeks
Well,
off.
it's there's no asymptomatic flu person basically.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's no like, if you get these diseases normally, you're not likely going to be feeling up to going out to the bar and partying with a whole bunch of people. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Unless you're yeah,
Whereas
unless you're college age.
yeah, because I think that's the thing with the flu is like its dormant period is like 2 or 3 days.
Hmm.
So you can be spreading it for 2 or 3 days.
Hmm.
That still could get to a bunch of people, but that's not 15,000 people in three
Hmm.
days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also, again, since it's something, because the flu does mutate, and that's why you have to get a new vaccine every year or whatever, vaccination for it.
Yeah.
But that's why coronavirus is so scary, is because it's a flu-like virus, because we've known about the flu, and we've known that the flu does mutate, but it's a flu-like virus that's so infectious that its chance for mutation is so much higher. We have no idea what could happen. And
Yeah.
literally anything could happen. Like it could evolve tomorrow to where it immediately shuts down your nervous system. Just fucking immediately.
Yeah.
Like and oh well, congratulations, all those 15,000 people every day in Florida who are getting it, y'all dead now. That's you know what I mean. That's why, and that's even like we're talking about the problems with the virus of getting the virus itself. There's also huge issues with just occupancy, and that's what we're going to start seeing, especially in Florida and Texas, is that the hospitals are going to be full of people in ICU beds because they've got COVID, people who are probably going to survive. But then what do? You don't have any ICU beds. What do you do if someone gets in a car accident? You don't have any ICU beds. Everyone's already taken up all the intubation
Well, then do
devices.
you think
That
that
person
the
has to get sent to another hospital.
well, that was a big concern that we had earlier on, where New York was asking the federal government for all the um, respirators or whatnot, and that big flattening the curve issue that we were worrying about, where the original reason that we went in to and all the lockdown was to make sure was to try to lower the curve to make sure we didn't spike so hard because of just how easily contagious this was. So there was a big concern that the hospitals were going to get overflown and we weren't going to be able to keep like capacity was not going to be able to keep up with the demand, and that has yet to happen um,
It,
anywhere
but it's yet
except
to
for like New
happen.
York.
It's yet to happen because we had that lockdown. You got to look at it. We had it was what I mean. I also only know for like Florida specifically.
Yeah,
We had what like 2 weeks, 3 weeks of like actual lockdown.
yeah.
So imagine right now, right where we're at right this second,
Hmm.
except it would have been 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks ago, we'd be at the 15,000 cases,
Hmm.
whatever. Because that's like it's not just from a lockdown alone. I don't think it's physically possible to completely eliminate the virus, especially one that's asymptomatic.
Hmm.
Because it would have to be one that's either there are no asymptomatic versions of it. That way, you can confirm everyone is disease free and then set them loose.
Hmm.
Or it's one that like it's just that we test every single person, and that latter one unfortunately just isn't economically viable. Um, so when we have a virus like this, honestly, it should have just been a long-term semi-lockdown. It should honestly probably even a full lockdown, probably not even necessary, but like a semi-lockdown where you can only have so many people in a building,
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. And enforce self-isolation if like you have symptoms. Sorry, I get a really bad cough out of nowhere.
Mm.
But I guess what I'm trying to get to specifically is just that what we're seeing right now, we have not even got out of the first wave.
Mm-hmm.
We just delayed the first wave a little bit. We're still riding that first wave. We've not had the opportunity to reach a second wave. We've not had the opportunity to actually plateau. We had a short period of time where it looked like it had started to go back down into right when we opened back up, which kicked it right back up. And that's the problem. Because like, you can look at other countries and see, based on what they're doing, whether or not it's working, right?
Yeah.
So, like look at Canada. Canada has almost no cases. They're almost as large as we are. They have a shit ton of people in their country as well. They're in North America. So it's not like it's a completely different biome. Like a lot of the way like what it's like to live in Canada is what it's like to live in a lot of the northern United States.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? What are they doing different that they have less cases in their country than we do in Florida?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it just the masks? Well, clearly not, because some people are wearing masks. You know, is it the lockdown? You know, what's the thing that's doing it? And instead of doing any of those things that those other countries are doing to see if we can make it work, we're just doing nothing. And doing nothing is the worst option.
Yeah. Total recovered. Which actually was spending time. Total tests. Wow. Trying to Interesting. Yeah, we do have do have the most tests. Tests per million. Yeah, interesting. I hope that lightning doesn't fuck us up. Or at least fuck up the stream.
That would be nice.
It's actually where I wish I need a the comparison between the U.S. or at least certain states, and then how they're actually, if any states are actually repeating, or was it total cases per million? I think it's where having comparison of states to other countries, especially considering the methodologies are varying across the country, that comparing the U.S. to everywhere else has its value, but
Oh yeah, definitely. But
states are having totally different approaches.
yeah, and I obviously I can't tell you every single one of the 50 states' specific approach.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you a lot about Florida's specific approach. I can also tell you that Florida is number 7 worldwide for state with the most cases, and that's like including the entirety of the UK, the entirety of the rest of the United States, like like fucking Brazil or whatever. Like we're like number 7. We have more cases just in Florida than most of the rest of the world does in their
Mm-hmm.
different countries.
Where's Florida? Florida. Total cases 300,000 right now. California and New York are beating us.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's if you just take Florida out of the rest of the United States. That wasn't like if we ranked all the. If we did that, then we'd be still up there, like in like top 10. But then like you really wouldn't have many
Yeah, if
other
you're running on
countries.
total cases, what Florida has 300,000. Where's that at? That chart I was just at. So Florida has 300,000. Let's go back to countries. Come on, where's that graph? Come on. Gimme. It's a great graph.
Yeah,
It's insane
Florida has some 300,000. Looks like it might have changed a little bit because I'm looking at a graph right now. The
So
10th highest is the UK with 291,000. So we are above the UK. We might be above Spain because Spain's only a little bit above 300,000, but I don't know
yeah, so
exactly
if
where
we
we're
were to
at as of
rank
today.
yeah, you're pretty much right there. We actually Florida by itself is right below Spain and above the UK. And so
Yeah.
everyone else below that has less cases.
Yep. And again,
Which
like you got to look at this shit like
well, you
not
have
all
to look
these
at
are
total
small
cases.
countries.
You have to look at total cases per million. Is like the next batch you need to like run down there too.
Oh yeah, no, that's also important. But I'm even talking like there are some countries down here that are like massive countries compared to Florida, just the state in terms of total population,
Mm-hmm.
and we still have significantly more cases than they do. Or the countries that have like more historical issues with like overcrowding and shit like that,
Yeah.
which is a breeding ground for disease, and yet we're doing worse than they are.
Yeah.
It's like there is no world at all where Bangladesh should be almost half the number of cases as just the state of Florida.
Yeah, because they're just below 200,000 right now. What is
Yeah.
it? I wish I had kept that up. Total cases per million is 1,175. Where is?
Fucking China has,
Do you trust
you know,
is
I,
China
I actually, I actually, I actually trust it more than I trust the shit coming in the United States right now, because at
Oh
the very least,
jeez.
um, we have politicians saying that they're actually going out of their way to obfuscate the data. At least we don't have people from China going, yeah, no, we're literally going out of our way to obfuscate the data.
Oh, they'll subtly say that they're not
Also,
doing
I
that.
know several people that live in China, and they've basically completely recovered. Whether or not that speaks of the whole of China, because
Yeah.
they're mostly in Hong Kong, I have no idea. But like, I got boots on the ground, and it's pretty much over there.
Yeah.
Most countries in the world, it's pretty much over. It's only like the top 10 to 15 that are still having huge issues with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we actually can't do that comparison. We'd have to actually get a population of Florida versus the total cases, just to see how that compares to some other countries. Vatican City, total cases 12, total cases per million 14,000. Because there's like 100 people in the Vatican.
Yeah, there's definitely some funny shit you can do with
With the
statistics.
numbers and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Oh,
still, it's
jeez.
like we're not, like, I mean, yeah, obviously, if you look at the United States as a whole, because the United States is, again, it's a union of states that are the size of countries and other countries.
Yeah.
So
But
obviously,
people
we would
unfortunately,
probably be a world leader anyway. But
well, I think that's kind of where we go back to the constant issue where people are, for whatever reason, whether it's the media's focusing them, everyone's far too focused on the federal government and the executive branch than on anything close to local, like anything
yeah,
that's like related to their state. Uh,
that's kind of a huge problem with the states in general. Is we rarely ever look at local elections when they're the most important elections.
yeah,
But it's still just like this is something that should have been so simple that we just had to make so difficult. like
yeah,
God, like, because that's the thing. Like, you got to ask yourself, like, okay, let's pretend for a second. We'll grant all the arguments. Masks don't do shit. Lockdown does nothing, right? How much worse would our lives have been if we had gone through with the lockdown and forced mask rules? Like, not particularly.
mm-hmm,
Like, fucking the UK was in lockdown for months. They're
mm-hmm,
fine because they passed the needed legislation to be able to actually support their citizens while they did that, right?
yeah.
And we can do it. We can do it right now. We've done it. We've done it several times already. It's just they just need to do it for a long enough period of time that we actually get through it. But no one wants to spend that money because they don't
Well,
want to take that money away from the
that's
military
the
industrial
big
complex.
that's actually the big frustration in terms of what happened, and it's the lockdown is where everyone gets a $1,200 check, but then that bill goes through, and what trillions go into major corporations or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
and that piece of shit. So it's like, oh, we could have done a 3 times long lockdown entirely, like no business has been deemed essential, and who knows, wipe out how much of not just the virus but other shit,
Yeah,
and
no,
cool.
fuck it, fuck that, fuck
Have
you.
a good summer, everyone.
Boeing needs a couple $1 billion. Eat my ass.
Yeah, no. I can understand where a business doesn't run out of profit because it spends all of its profitable money on R&D or other shit, but you kind of screwing some pooches there, buddy.
Oh yeah,
Kind of screwing some pooch.
it's the whole.
So let's
It's
roll this into a
it's
positive thing.
socialism.
Let's roll this into a positive thing actually, because I can feel the energy
Okay.
coming down for both of us. I have wanted, and I think Florida is a great state for it. Um, I have wanted to figure out a production of a show where it's like, alrighty, welcome to local politics in your fucking state. And we grab whatever research we can of like at whatever level of government, and we just run through. But we have a very lambastic, unprofessional, but very factually correct. Like I don't know if you've ever watched anything of Steven Crowder's. I'm not here to concern about like his politics or whatnot, but something that's silly, but it runs like a quick like daily show and now like rundown. I was like, here's what's coming up on your area. This person's an idiot. This person like something like that. Just because I think more things that would be that would provide um, an eye, an entertaining factual eye on state level and probably a little bit, maybe a few levels down politics, would I think it'd be a good thing to try to do. I think, and I always aim for these things to be like fun, comical, and factual, basically.
I don't know. For me, that scare. What's the word I'm looking for? Veers. That veers a little too close to the reactionary video vlogosphere or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that kind of shit. Um, because like I get it. You know, like
Yeah,
people want to relax, they want to have fun, they want to laugh, but like I feel like that's been a huge problem with like that caused us to be in this situation
too
where people
entertainment focused and
view.
not enough focus.
Yeah, that like the reason people have an issue with the media nowadays isn't because there's anything necessarily wrong with media. It's because of the fact that it's so focused on making money off of people, just getting people to watch. So like, oh, it doesn't matter if the stuff we're saying is true or if the information we're giving you is helpful in any way. It just matters that we got you to look at it and to tune in and give us money.
I had the thought that when a lot of those networks became for profit back in the early '90s, that's when everything started heading towards this. Um, and the example they provide is like the Casey Anthony case, where they put her in slow mo over and over again, like it's a replay from a fucking sports event, and so our news has become much more of an entertainment game than it has been an actual news source.
Yeah,
And it's just expanded with like Google basically requiring free articles and thus limiting and turning classic journalism um, into something that has to like be looking to be at the top of the algorithm, and not just like not let the New York Times just be a reliable place that people go to um, for stuff. Um, so that's where I'm with you on like turning proper news media into entertainment is sort of falling to the same pit that's led us down this road where news media is frankly a fucking joke,
oh yeah,
and
and I feel
unreliable.
like another part of the problem is that news media, because they're so profit oriented, they are so careful not to piss off
Anything
like certain
important.
groups.
Yeah, they won't
But
say
yeah,
anything important.
and they'll go out of their way to present two ideas as being like equal in merit, but one is very clearly like, why the fuck is this person here?
Did you ever watch
Like,
there's 3 seasons of it. Did you ever watch The Newsroom?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I don't think
It's
so.
an Aaron Sorkin series. Um, I loved it. I really wish I could like help produce or make like a newsroom for like the modern day that's just like writing episodes based on like 6 month ago events. I wonder where it's playing or showing right now. Newsroom is great. I think I'm trying to remember where we watched that. It was on Hulu or something like that. But Newsroom's great. It's got the guy opposite Jim Carrey from Dumb and Dumber. I can't remember what other roles he's done before. But it's got him as the anchor as a serious role. And it just basically goes through the drama and the romance and the rigmarole. But it goes from the timeline of the show goes from when the Gulf oil spill happened um, through what's another current event that they basically used through I guess basically that transition where you started bringing in teenagers with opinions and treating them as if they were experts. Um, and I think the Mitt Romney campaign when he was going against Obama, I guess. Um, but yeah, I don't know if you ever liked West Wing or if you ever liked anything from Aaron Sorkin because his dialogue style I don't think is um, it doesn't appeal to a lot of people, but I love it. And I love like how he writes characters. Um, Newsroom's a great piece of, I guess, media commentary on news media
Yeah,
and what it's
I
transitioned
don't think I've
to.
seen any of Andy Sorkin's stuff, so I might have to check that out.
Aaron Sorkin, my name, last name
Aaron
Sorkin.
Sorkin. Oh,
Yeah.
my bad.
What else has he written? Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin. What has he done? He looks like a goddamn goofball. Um, a Few Good Men. What else has he done? Sports Night, The West Wing, Newsroom. Oh wow, doesn't look like he's got. Was it Charlie Wilson's Enemy of the State? The Social Network. Okay, Steve Jobs from 2017. Um, Plays, cameo acting appearances, Academy Awards. Oh, he did Moneyball. He did
Oh, I have
Moneyball.
seen Moneyball. I like Moneyball.
Wonder what he did. Accolades. Best adapted screenplay was Moneyball and Molly's Game and Social Network. Um, okay. So he doesn't have a lot, but he has a few things. Yeah, he got a lot of nominations for West Wing.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about West Wing. I've heard it's
Yeah,
very popular.
yeah. No,
I'm just
I
not. I'm not just not super into like political thrillers set in the real world.
I'm not sure if that one's really a thriller of a TV series.
Isn't it? Isn't it about a guy like who's president
Yeah, it's
and
about the
like the
president and like the
bullshit he
daily
has to
life of the
deal with?
president or whatnot. I didn't even get through season one. Um, I just didn't. Sometimes things just fall like
It's
that.
fair.
Um, you know. Let me see here. The newsroom is playing on what right now? Where can I watch? Where is this? Max HBO Max free trial. Oh boy, it's locked into HBO right now. Fuck that. Okay, go acquire like the first season of that and let me know what you
Yeah,
think.
yes,
If it
acquire.
yeah emphasis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Oh, we're in a pickle in this country. We're in such a fucking pickle.
Yep.
It's so bad.
It's and the way I look at it, the things will get better
Yeah.
because it's they just have to. We're at a point. It's not much lower we can go without everyone dying. So
Yeah, no, I know how much lower it can get. It's when people start getting called kulaks, basically. That's just about where we're heading. Everyone
yeah.
gets started calling kulaks, and it's like, oh well, oh boy, time to leave. Time to go find an
Yeah.
island or something. Jesus Christ, it's gonna get bad.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's gonna be fine. A lot of it is like just you got to put your faith in the younger generation. People of our generation and below are seemingly much more intelligent than the generations
Yeah,
that came before them. That's a like fucked way to say it, but I can't figure out a better like. But we
it,
seem more plugged into what's actually going on as
well,
opposed to the older generations,
okay,
who
so
seem to be mostly operating off of older like frameworks.
so
If
I
that makes any
wish you
sense.
reminded me of you reminded me of Gamergate. I wish I actually had a better play-by-play on that actual Gamergate.
I can give you the play on that entirely on my
Go
own if
for
you
it.
want.
I'd love to hear like your perspective on it.
Jesus, you want like the whole thing? Because I was there for like the entirety of
Run
the
it down.
saga.
Run it down.
So Gamergate, uh, one first of all, before I even get into this, I have to say fuck the whole thing. Fuck it for having happened. It ruined my favorite website. um, so Gamergate, what happened was, and again, I'm saying this. I was on the ground floor. I was in those threads. I was making those shit posts. I was with them.
Uh huh.
So it started. Everyone knows the Five Guys thing with that one lady and that guy she was dating, and she was a game developer or whatever.
Okay.
I don't care. I never gave a shit about the people that were involved. Most people didn't give a shit about the people who were involved. It was a group of dedicated alt-right motherfuckers who hijacked the narrative and turned it into a let's harass these people rather
Mm-hmm.
than let's get this fixed in games journalism, because that's what it started as. Primarily, it was a hey, here is a thing that happened where somebody seemingly had sex with a couple of journalists, quote unquote, and as such got really good reviews on their games, and that's really fucked up. And it's endemic of a lot of the fucked up shit we see in the games industry, even to this day. The
Yeah.
nepotism in games journalism is fucking disgusting, and I hate it. Which is why I'm so pissed off about Gamergate, because that's how it started. We were writing letters to these companies saying, "Hey, you know, or not to like the companies that were doing the news, or to like their supporters, their like advertisers, saying, "Hey, this company, we know for a fact they do really fucked up shit journalistic wise. We're not okay with that, and we're not going to support your products if you continue to advertise on their website." And that's how Gawker Media ended up getting shut down, which is a great thing. Fuck Gawker Media.
Okay.
um, but that ended up, like most things nowadays that get political, you get that one victory, and all the people that cared about making change left, like just immediately.
They get
Gawker
the one
Media went
victory, think
down.
it's a statement that's gonna like somehow keep the ball rolling, and
Yeah, but what happened was that a bunch of reactionaries, alt-right reactionaries, fucking vloggers and video makers, whatever bullshit you want to, whatever, however you want to style yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Reactionaries is just the best way. The people who react to shit. That's how they make their money. They're grifters. They saw there was still a lot of pent up animosity, and so they decided to direct it towards what is a very easy target. And they use what is quite literally fascistic language in order to say, hey, the issue isn't with these companies that have really fucked up business practices and are doing really fucked up things as a business. The problem is these social justice warriors and these individual people.
Mm-hmm.
We got to go after them because it's them and their ideas that will destroy us. And it was this really fucked up ratcheting up of the language. They're going to destroy the games industry. They're going to blah blah whatever. They ended up changing it from what it had started out to be, which was, hey, games journalists aren't actual journalists, and that should probably change. To hey, fuck the lefties. Let's own the libs.
Mm-hmm. Are you there?
And then, yep,
Okay.
I'm still here. Did you hear me?
I heard a click, so I was like, did he just mute himself and he's going on his rant right now? And then
Oh
it's
no,
not. So
no.
you're fine. You're fine. No
Yeah,
worries.
the rant is mostly over. I'm mad that it happened because it ruined my favorite website because now it's full of fucking chuds and we can't get rid of them. but whatever, that's fine.
Mm. Do you want to reveal what that website favorite website was, or
I
is?
think those that know what I'm talking about.
Okay,
Those
yeah.
that don't, it's fine. Don't
I
worry
have, I have
about
a
it.
good I have a good I have a good guess. I have a good guess. Okay. Okay. Alrighty. So that's interesting. I need to actually get a
Yeah,
proper
I don't know.
breakdown
I
of
don't know
that one.
where were you going with the GamerGate stuff because I
I'd
was
heard names mentioned like Christina Hoff Summers and stuff like that around Gamergate, or at least she mentioned it in a podcast that I was like listening to, but I had yet to hear a proper narrative of what broke down because it sounded like um, some cancel culture stuff or like leftists were like getting into the gaming community trying to assert um, their own narrative, and then I call it the power of autism basically because a lot of gamers
that's
are
it's pretty accurate.
well, it's one of those where like they try to the leftist cancel culture narrative tries to come into the gaming community and claim whatever narrative that they want, and then the autistic kids are just like, no, that's bullshit. Like
Yeah, I
and
mean
they're
that's
very
a
and they're very factually based, and they just like they don't apologize like idiot Republicans do when they don't do anything wrong, and yada there. They don't apologize. They stick to their facts and their guns, and they basically walk away untouched from what the crazy cancel culture was trying to do.
Yeah, see that's a very charitable version of the events.
Yeah.
The gamer gators, whatever the people doing it were the cancel culture.
Hmm.
They were the cancelers. No one else is getting canceled before that happened, and they were like, "Hey, this journalist did fucked up shit. I want them gone." Etc. You
Hmm.
basically look at that in the Gamergate. It basically split up into you have the left side that is now what would probably be called the cancel culture side,
Hmm.
you would probably lump me into.
Hmm.
But obviously, it's not cancel culture. I got to go into cancel culture itself separately, but I'm gonna do that after I finish talking about this.
Okay.
Um, but the alt right side of Gamergate is what hijacked it and used it to try to put forth a political message. It
Hmm.
was basically entirely apolitical until we started getting a lot of larger like talking heads and bigger figures and shit in the community, like JonTron and Mr. Medicare and all that shit. When those people started talking about it, that's when they started to shift the discourse, and it started shifting away from, hey, this person literally, it seems, obviously I'm not going to talk about whether or not that actually happened because it was a long
The
time ago and I
accusations are
don't know.
thrown
But
out,
the
and
accusation was, hey, this journalist had sex with someone and gave them better reviews because of it. And that's what it started with.
yeah,
That is fucked up. And I think that's something everyone can agree with. And started getting shifted towards, actually, these games journalists are SJWs and we don't like that and they're trying to censor us. Where in reality, that was not really what was happening at all. Now, I will say, I personally am a leftist. And I will say this right now, woke scolds kill the left, and they're going to kill the left if they don't stop.
woke. Okay,
um,
that's a new woke
so your term for
skulls.
you, woke scold. A woke scold is somebody who scolds others for not being as woke as they are.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
someone who's
That
a
that made
leftist.
sense once I heard how it was pronounced. Like, yeah, because there's a lot of need to be woke shit right now,
Yeah,
and
and
right
like that's
now,
it's so the way I look at it, like it's good. to be correct about things. And if if someone's being vehemently wrong, whatever, that's fine. But the problem is that so many people are so quick to jump on even people on the left for being slightly less woke than they're supposed to.
Yeah,
Like
well,
there's a bunch of people who um like terminology. A prominent leftist YouTuber recently made a video where they were apologized for using the term lunacy, and I understand that historically speaking, the term lunacy was used as a derogatory term for not mentally. What's the word for someone who has a mental illness?
yeah, yeah. It had a technical
Whatever,
term, and then
whatever.
it got turned
Yeah,
derogatory, like
it's
retard.
yeah, yeah. We use it derogatory, and he apologized for using lunacy to describe like a conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a conspiracy. Like that.
Yeah,
It is like the one time when it's actually fair to say,
yeah. Well,
yes,
that's
this
where
is actual insanity.
you get into this area where being politically correct ends up binding a lot of people so that they can't think because they can't speak, and then they have to apologizing for
Well, I don't even.
everything.
That's the thing. I don't even necessarily agree with that specifically because there
Hmm.
definitely are certain things that you shouldn't say.
Well, I think
And anyone
that could
who
be a
come.
setting conversation too.
Oh yeah, but the big thing is like if you ask anyone like what words they're not allowed to say, they'll be very hesitant to use those words because there's good reasons why we don't use those words.
Yeah,
Like we don't just throw around the N word because you shouldn't.
yeah.
Period. It's not, and someone getting mad at you. That's the thing. A lot of people who are like, oh, against PC culture, they're not against PC culture. They're against consequences for their language.
Mm-hmm.
You can say whatever the fuck you want. I could say anything right now and
Mm-hmm.
go off on a 5-minute spring of saying nothing but the N word.
But there are
I can do it,
consequences for
but there will be
being.
consequences for doing it.
Yeah. Well.
If you want to act like an asshole, people will treat you like an asshole. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a. That's why like so many people get like upset about the cancel culture. And there was like recently that open letter signed by like J.K. Rowling and
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of other people like, oh, cancel cultures. We're afraid to say things because there might be consequences and blah blah. And it's like that's how it should be. There
Well,
should
I
be
think there's a difference
consequences for the
between
things that you say.
consequences for saying things, but then there's this weird thing where these public figures put out opinions, and because they tie value, or there's a ridiculous amount of value tied to these social medias and how much access people have to these people, that the level of consequence perhaps is in fact more than any person should ever fucking deal with, because you can have a million people attack you through these social media channels. So while
And again,
consequences,
I
we can agree
so
on
it's
consequences for what you say, but there's a point where the consequences are so ridiculous
But see,
that the
that's where, and that's why it circles back around to the woke scold thing.
yeah.
That's what the difference is between people like myself and people who are woke
Well, that's
scolds.
where, like, and I wouldn't have even known these existed or you existed, but it's where you almost sound like a reasonable leftist, which is really, depending on who
That's the
you,
thing. That's the thing.
yeah,
Most people on actually surprisingly both sides are actually reasonable.
yeah.
It's just that reasonable people are boring,
Well,
so
reasonable
they
people.
tend not to be the ones who end up getting
Well,
millions
I
of
might be
views
outing you
or
here because
making good
I might be
news.
misreading you here, but that's where I think a lot of the crazy shit that happens online with all the yelling and screamers comes from the extremists, and that's where the extreme sides
Mhm.
of any spectrum, and that's where at this point, I don't think social media serves any good purpose when it comes to discourse. I find Twitter, like, I've walked away from Facebook effectively. Like, it's barely there. I have my October annual, and that event doesn't ever do anything in terms of what it does on Facebook for my event. Um, Twitter, I only find fun with that, or good interaction with that. Maybe getting like information on what's going on from news sources or whatnot. But my biggest joy out of it comes from the weekends when I'm watching League of Legends esports scene. Um, and and then after that, like, I don't think the social medias are actually good. There's plenty of stuff coming out of people like Jonathan Haidt who show that Instagram and stuff like that and Snapchat, these social medias are having grave, incredible negative impacts on our youth, on our teenagers, in terms of like suicide attempts and rates and depression going up massively for young women, and who knows how much porn addiction for young men. So like at this point, for at least the social media conversation, I think it needs to go the fuck out. Back to the point where I think both sides are quite reasonable, but unfortunately, all you ever are going to see or hear out of at least the normal people bodies out of like either mob on these social medias that are attacking either side. It's just these fucking degens from up country from both sides of the fucking aisle that have this time
Yeah.
and dedication to be this ridiculous and be online all the fucking time and
Yeah,
think
I
that.
will. I will say there is still statistical delineation between left and right in terms of voters on the left tend to be more informed voters than voters on the right, but that's more so just because, like, currently, the right is has been taken hold of by the Trump camp, which is very much very populistic, very low information good, high information bad. But that's like a recent thing. That's not like a like generally speaking, Republican voters tend to be lower education wise than left leaning voters. But
Mhm.
that's not a like, oh, people on the right are stupid, because a lot of people on the right are also very very wealthy and very intelligent.
Yeah,
Um,
well,
the
that's
the problem
where.
is that those people, the people who are very very wealthy, generally speaking, want to control the stupidest people possible, and that's where you end up getting that.
Well, I think leadership on either side of a political situation would be wanting to control the stupid people on their side.
Yes, no, 100%. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that it's you, because of the fact that both sides try to do that, and then the one side also happens to be more in line with the beliefs of more educated people just in general. That's where you get that delineation, because
Mm.
both sides are doing it, but one side is taking away the people who are not that. If that makes
Mm.
any sense. But
Yeah, so to
it's a,
speak.
it's a it's there's
It's
very specific policies that you can support or not support, and your likelihood to support them tends to track with your level of education, and
mhm.
those are what makes the difference, and that's what makes it look like more people on the left or the right are not, or are as smart as whatever. So if you ask me, fuck the left and the right, fuck both of them. Not enlightened centrism on policies, obviously, because policies are either correct or not correct, but the two-party systems are fucked, and we shouldn't have one.
Well, that's where we actually initially started discussing this because of a Facebook post I put up
Mm-hmm.
regarding Brett Weinstein's Unity 2020, and you jumped into the we need to have a redoing of our voting system to head towards something that was I can't remember the name of it right now. Um,
There's a lot of different names for it. The name I choose to use is ranked choice voting,
mhm.
because there are multiple different names for it, because based off of like how the election like winning is handled.
Yeah.
So if you have like a parliamentary system where you have multiple people that get the elect that like win the election, they usually call it like a single transferable vote or stuff like that, because it functions a little bit differently. But they're essentially the same thing, wherein you have as many people as want to run, and
Hmm.
you vote for as many people as you want to vote for,
Yeah.
and you vote for them in order. And if your first choice can't win, they're eliminated, and their votes are redistributed to that person's second choice
Yeah.
on down the line, until you get someone who wins, who actually has a majority of the vote behind them.
Hmm.
So I don't
So
know. That's just like a brief overview of what it is. I
yeah,
know you had other
my
questions and stuff.
Mike, I'm very curious because I like having I like people like I like having facts to back up the things. So I like where Thomas Sowell looks at world level examples of policy for certain things. So in terms of the voting thing, I'm curious, has this been successfully implemented anywhere, and what's a good metric with which to, I guess, measure the success of such a policy or
So
such a voting system?
in terms of where it's been implemented, that's the hardest part. So first past the post polling creates a two-party system
Yeah, yeah,
necessarily, based on literally on the way it works. If you want me to go into how on that, I can. I have a lot of information on it.
it's a
But
winner take
once you
all.
have,
It's a winner
yeah,
take all, and the long con is that eventually, in the Animal Kingdom example provided by what's his face that you gave me,
CPG Gray,
CPG
fantastic
Gray,
videos.
he does very good basic videos for explaining concepts and where they would reasonably go in terms of their systems, and real life seems to be imitating it, so I can't exactly argue against them. But if you're going to have a multi-party situation, eventually, as the smaller parties, so to speak, keep losing, or they consolidate into the other parties, you eventually end up with a two-party system because it's a winner-take-all situation.
Yes,
Um,
and voters don't vote in a vacuum. Each voter knows how other voters are going to vote.
yeah,
They know going in, my candidate can't win.
yeah,
As such, they then change their vote to get to the candidate that will make their lives as better as possible,
yeah.
even though they can't have their person.
Trade-offs, basically. Yeah,
Yeah.
a trade-off situation.
So in terms of places that do use ranked choice voting, I believe Australia still does,
Mm-hmm.
but they're like the only like full nation that like the whole
Mm-hmm.
nation uses it for like their high profile elections. There are a large number of places in the United States that use it. And like if you Google, I'm gonna see if I can find it, but like I googled it earlier, like rankedchoicevoting.org, I think it is,
Yeah, 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 I'm looking
where
it
it
up now.
literally lists like all the different countries that currently have it or did have it, where they used it, how they used it,
Yeah, right
etc.
now it has it in several states actually too. It's
Yeah,
it
we
is.
there are several like individual states and cities in the United States that use it.
Mhm.
Um, but it's the argument most people have against it is the, oh well, we've never tried it before in a state as large as the United States. How will we know if it works or not?
Mhm.
And to them, I say it's very easy. You just look at how it's going to work, and you can tell it's going to be better.
Well,
Because
you're
you gotta
believing like I would sooner have the run the fucking experiment because I believe that
yeah, no,
I believe
don't get me wrong.
theorizing we can agree that theorizing an idea doesn't mean the idea is going to fucking work. There's plenty of policies
Yeah,
out there that have intentions, design, support, and then they fall flat on their ass.
yes. So, but the thing is, we because we've run ranked choice voting for so long, we know the problems inherent with it,
Yeah.
right?
So is the
And we
trade-off
have
to
to
an
ask ourselves,
alternative system?
what do we want out of our
Yeah.
voting system, right?
Yeah.
And the answer to that question is, generally speaking, every citizen wants to be represented, and we want our vote to matter,
Yeah.
right? Those are, and like, is there anything else like that you can think of that you think a voting system needs to have? Because to me, those are the two important things. I as a voter, I feel represented, and I feel like my vote matters.
Hmm.
In a ranked choice voting system, you have that because no matter who you personally prefer, whether like let's say I want Vermin Supreme for president 2020, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, right now, voting for Vermin Supreme is literally throwing my vote in the trash because it's not possible for him to win. He's too much of a niche candidate. He can't get the support necessary because we live in a first past the post voting system, and everyone else knows that he doesn't have enough support to win. Whether or not he actually has the support, he full well might have the support, but we've convinced ourselves that he doesn't through the propaganda that we just have
Yeah, with
vis-a-vis our media
our
system.
media and our
And it's not,
own.
and I need to say that it's not propaganda like it's targeted. Like I don't think the media gives a shit about Vermin Supreme, but because the media exists as a thing,
Yeah.
we have those household names for a reason.
Yeah. This is actually where my curiosity in a historical context is, because I have yet to do a proper any reading of the Federalist Papers, but um, the forefathers of America spent a lot of time creating the Electoral College, and my curiosity is, was there even the idea of um, ranked choice voting, so to speak, back there in the 1770s, because they end up doing the first past the post voting system, but they implement the electoral college to prevent the mob rule idea of a pure democracy.
Well, there is another reason why the Electoral College was created, and it's one that a lot of people forget about, and I
Mm-hmm.
believe it is also the more important one. So back when our country started, and even for like 100, 200 years afterwards, cars didn't exist, right?
Yeah,
If you and we didn't have the internet, if you were going to cast your vote, you would need to literally physically go to the place to cast your vote,
yeah,
and then the votes needed to be given to the country in DC for those votes to all be counted for the whole country to be counted.
yeah,
So you had to have somebody walk the votes from your city or state to the capital,
yeah,
and that's where the electoral college comes from, and specifically the faithless elector like a clause, because the idea was it's going to take weeks or months to get those votes literally transported from the place where the vote was cast to the capital. So a faithless elector, as they're just the person bringing the votes from the state or the city district, whatever. They, if like between the time it takes them to leave their city and get to the capital, it turns out, ooh, the candidate they were going to vote for committed mass murder. Okay, cool. You can change your mind now because we understand it's going to take 2 weeks for you to get here, and a lot of stuff can happen in 2 weeks.
yeah,
We now live in a society where that is not a problem. Those are the kinds of problems that the electoral college system was looking to solve. One, the literal distance issue, and two, the mob rule issue, which is an issue. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but like rule through majority,
yeah,
where it's the wrong decision, but it was the majority, therefore it gets through. But that is a legitimate issue to be concerned about, and that's what the electoral college system is trying to cover. But we no longer need the proviso for faithless electors. We no longer need that gimme for the time to literally deliver the votes, because the votes can be delivered in an hour, like literally just electronically.
Yeah,
Press a button.
yeah. The logistical aspect isn't there.
So when you look at it, and you're looking at what you want out of a voting system, and you compare what we have currently to a ranked choice voting system, it would function very similarly, but you would always be able to have the faith that whoever you want the most, you can still vote for as your first choice.
Yeah,
You don't have to worry about, because like let's say going in this election, I do not like Trump. I also do not like Biden. They are both pieces of shit. However, I can admit to myself that I would prefer to have one of them over the other,
yeah,
right? But I really want Bernie fucking Sanders, right?
yeah,
So in a ranked choice voting system, even I mean, we can't necessarily stop primaries because they're not actually government sanctioned things. The
yeah.
RNC and the DNC are private corporations, and they do that on their own
Yeah, but
time. Um,
they may get rid of a Republican or a Democrat that you would prefer, but
yeah,
um,
but that person, if it was ranked choice, that person can run anyway,
yeah, they could
and
run
they
as
can
an
run without
independent or as
being.
a Republican. It's possible that the ranked choice voting would actually just remove the primaries
Yeah,
and
there
just
would be much less of a reason to have them.
yeah,
I mean, I do think that they would still happen because the RNC and the DNC specifically still want to put forth their best candidate
yeah,
because they still have a vested interest in winning as a group.
yeah,
But it wouldn't matter. You couldn't, like, if Bernie wanted to run, he could just run. It'd
oh
be
yeah,
fine. And all the people that want to vote for him can vote for him, and then put their number two as Biden if they prefer Biden.
yeah,
And then they don't have to worry about the fact that they voted for the third party candidate if he doesn't have enough votes to win, that they just wasted all their votes and the guy they could have beaten otherwise won instead.
yeah,
Because that's the issue, is that it's not necessarily, because if you just want to look at it from a systemic point of view, like, yeah, they both function similarly. But
hmm
once you get into the meta of it and the fact that the people who are casting their votes aren't casting their votes in a vacuum, and they know how other people are planning on casting their votes, that's the problem. That's where it changes it. Once you introduce that human element, we need to have something there that says, okay, we understand what you want to do. Here's a system that allows you to accomplish that while still having a similar outcome to the previous system.
yeah,
And we may even, because of how far gone the United States is, that even ranked choice voting might not end up fixing it, because we might have so many people that are so stuck in their it's my team versus their team ways that they just don't even actually use it, and they just vote for the one person that their team told them to vote for. But I feel like because there's so many independents in this country, and there are so many actually like interested voters that do actually have good information, I feel like what that would do, it would destroy the Democratic and the Republican parties almost entirely, and we would never have another Democrat or Republican win because everyone would be coming out of the woodwork in the independent sector.
yeah. Well, I think right now that the Republican Party is a ghost because Trump's in charge and he's not a Republican, which is its own fucking joke. And then the Democratic Party is about to split itself in half between
Yeah.
a lot of Democrats that feel disenfranchised by the leftist side versus the moderate Democratic side, and it ends up
Well,
with
the way I like to phrase it is you've got the neoliberals and the well, just liberals. You got liberals and leftists.
mhm,
Liberals are that are the like Democratic establishment camp kind of people, and
yeah,
leftists are the people who they don't care about necessarily liberal ideology and the specific individuals. They just care about getting the policies passed that will help people.
mhm.
And that's where you've got that breakup, because
Well,
the people who
that's the
are the
difference between
liberals aren't
AOC.
necessarily wrong,
Yeah, that's the difference
right?
between like AOC and Pelosi, basically.
Yes, yeah, more or less. I would say more so AOC and Cory Booker, because I don't even think most of the people in the Democratic establishment actually like Nancy Pelosi. She's a
No,
fucking like.
she's an
Don't
idiot.
get me wrong, like, yes, Queen Slay, whatever. Like, you feel free to have your memes, but like Pelosi's basically Republican like. Like, in terms of what she actually votes for, she more or less just a Republican
Hmm
that wears blue. Um, but that's so much of the problem, though, is that like there really is no difference between the parties in terms of their establishment, because all they care about is winning. As long
Yeah.
as they win, they make money. That's it. That's all they care about. They're literally just corporations,
hmm
and that's what the problem is. We need to get the power away from corporations and groups of individuals and bring it back to actual individuals.
Yeah, that's where I think the only thing I easily bring up to anyone from the crazies to the moderate regular humans is like, if you actually just got rid of the lobbying and the corporate money involved, then all this, I swear that's like the single drop in the bucket that just makes everything else just tidal
Oh
wave
yeah,
over.
oh yeah, 100%. Because it's like so just so many of our politicians are just bought and sold. Like
Yeah.
not even not like it's not even funny.
Well, we're
Like
the
you can
only.
look at the fucking at the Democratic primary, Buttigieg, like before he started getting money from supporters because he did well in a couple of states. He was for basically everything that Sanders was for. He was like, "Yep, $15 minimum wage, 100%. Yep,
Hmm.
single payer healthcare system, 100%." And then he had his little wine cave meeting, and all of a sudden, oh, you know what? We actually can't do those things because I've received a large amount of money from people that don't want me to say those things.
Hmm.
That's literally just how it happens. It happens on the Republican side too. It's just that the Republicans care less about, because Republican voters more so vote generally speaking. Again, obviously, I'm not talking about specifics, but they generally vote based off of my team.
Hmm.
They'll vote for the Republican regardless for the most part. Because like I know people who personally fucking despised Trump in 2016, but voted for him anyway because a bad Republican is better than a good Democrat to them. Um,
Oh yeah,
so
no,
like
I know Republicans that are just like, yeah, I have no one to vote for this year. I have no one to
yeah,
vote for.
yeah,
I
oh
don't
yeah,
like any
hundred
of my
percent.
options.
And I would not blame them. I feel the same way. I have no one to vote for. I'm going to be voting for Biden because I don't think we can survive another 4 years with Trump in office, especially without the pandemic having already gone away. I can't imagine another full year of having the pandemic with him in office.
Mm.
Like, and that, like, and I really don't want to get into like specific, talking about specific politicians or policies, but like the man literally committed a war crime. Like, he went on national TV and said that he's specifically slowing down testing to make our numbers look better. That's a war crime. That could fuck the entire country.
Yeah.
Like we could be completely screwed. Like, but no, he just does it anyway. Because fuck it, got mine. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. Rank choice is a way to go. Um,
Sounds like it's
it
ranked choice and get corporate money out of politics, and then it's like then the country gets to actually like speak for itself.
Yeah, or just get the money out of politics. Period. Because I do
Yeah.
feel like ranked choice matters significantly less when everyone's on the same foot.
Yeah.
But because that's the thing, a lot of people don't look at it this way, but you really need to. In this country, yeah, it's supposed to be one person, one vote. It's not really how it works because let's say the governor of Florida, or no, not governors. I'm looking for like Senator Florida, whatever, is going up there and he's casting his vote for a policy, right? And
Yeah.
every single person back in Florida except one wants that policy to go through, but that one person spends $10 billion to get that one vote from that senator to go the way he wants it to. Suddenly, that one person has every single vote in Florida, and
Yeah.
everyone else has no votes.
Yeah.
That's what the issue is.
Yeah.
Lobbying's fucked. I honestly, I feel
Well,
like
we're
they
the
should just
only
be.
we're the only like developed quote unquote at this point. We're the only developed enlightened country, democratic republic or whatnot that even has lobbying in it in this day and age.
I mean, no, there are some others that have like different kinds of lobbying, but lobbying as it is in the United States is pretty much just the United States.
Yeah.
But the idea of lobbying is still a thing in a lot of other countries. But that it's less in America. It's five mega corporations who control like the gun manufacturing
Mm.
lobby. It's five corporations, or I don't know how many. I'm not. I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass. I'm not saying literally. Don't
Yeah. Yeah.
quote me on that.
Yeah.
But you have five or whatever corporations in a specific industry. They pool their money together and they all lobby for the same thing because it's good for that company. Because it's good for that company doesn't mean it's good for the people. It could be
Yeah.
really bad for the people. It could be terrible for the country.
Yeah.
But those five corporations have between them more money than the majority of the people who live in the United States. And because of that, they're able to have that much more power. Whereas if you look at it in like most other countries, you'll have like lobbies for like women's health, right? And like
Yeah.
that's not like 10 companies pooling together money. That's like a bunch of moms who like care about something and like put together like their own money and like donation funds and shit like that.
Mm.
You just don't have that massive industrial complex money behind the voting because most other countries don't have the God, what was that act? The really Citizens United, I think it was.
Okay.
The one that protected donations to politicians as protected speech. Sounds like a good idea.
Mm.
In practice, it means that you can give however much money you want from your company to a politician and
Even
fuck
though
the rules. 'Cause-
people is it people or CPACs or whatnot have like I remember this back in like 2009 like U.S. government class, but like there are certain CPACs or certain not like political I guess is the nature of them. They have their limits, but then there have been the bigger CPACs that allow for another level of donation to go
Yep.
out. Just trying to find these other ways in to donate more money to
Yep.
buy the candidate, buy the politician even more, and
Yep.
then
And that's
companies.
the problem is that the like it sounds like a good idea, like, oh, protect you spending
Yeah, but
money
your free speech
for
against a
as freedom of
candidate or
speech.
whatnot is your
But
vote.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. So you look at someone like Jeff Bezos, who's got billions, trillions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos can donate as Jeff Bezos, and that's protected, and he can donate up to his maximum. Then he can donate as Amazon,
Yep.
because they're now a separate entity, and that speech is protected. And then he can donate to a super PAC that also donates to those people, that specifically goes for the things he wants. And then he can hire lobbyists who themselves donate money directly to these individuals. That's where the problem is that where corporations are essentially, the best way I think to look at them is like computers. They're not actually living organisms. They're computers made up of a series of living organisms that make individual decisions. But when you own a corporation, you own all those individuals in that
Yeah.
company,
So to speak.
essentially, so to
So to
speak.
speak. Yeah.
So I can pay you, my employee, $20,000. Hey, you want a nice $20,000 bonus? Go give this $50,000 to that candidate over there and tell him it's from me. That is completely legal. I mean, maybe the numbers might not be. Again, I haven't looked at that
Well, yeah,
specifically.
you're
But
running a
like,
hypothetical of what is likely a real situation.
yeah. So like, I can, however many employees I have in my company, that's how many times I get to donate. That's how many votes I actually have. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's it's just such a huge issue, because you can even look at it from like, someone did a study. I'd have to look it up, but like there's the public perception of like what policies should and should not pass for like the past 50 years. The votes passed by like both sides of the aisle go completely against what people actually want in every single case. They
Hmm.
only ever go for what like the wealthy want, because the
Was
wealthy
there
are
a
the
was
ones
there a
buying the
landmark moment
votes.
or a landmark act that basically said the moment, like within 10 years of this act, or 5 years probably, of this act coming to becoming alive, basically, do we see an immediate trend of things happening counter to like the people's will? Um,
We don't see necessarily a change in that, I don't believe. Citizens United is that landmark case that we're talking about,
yeah,
because that's the one that guaranteed these things as a constitutional right for businesses.
yeah, and then
But we
and
still
then
had that issue previously. It's just that now it's not legal for us to
so it
pass laws
exacerbated
against
it
it.
more.
Yeah, it basically was the last nail in the coffin,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
Because before Citizens United, we could have passed laws that forbid this or curtail it, but now it's protected speech, and there's nothing you can do.
yeah.
What we would need is for Citizens United to be repealed, and then we would be able to start to passing
So
actual laws to
start
get the
the
real
peeling
changes.
process, basically, peeling the
Yeah,
onion. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, because that Citizens United basically is like that outer layer. Like until you get through that, you ain't doing anything. You gotta
Yeah.
get that off.
Yeah. I was looking for like a Glass-Steagall equivalent. It's like market stable. Glass-Steagall goes away? Ah, shit. All right. All right. Okay. Well, this has actually been a little bit more fun than I was expecting.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad. I was afraid that I was going to be super boring, because we
I wasn't
we
worried
that's
about you
why I was
being
asking you
boring.
before. You were like, yeah, let's talk about like voting and stuff like
I'm
that, and I was
I'm
like,
unfortunately made
okay.
very stressed out by all the stuff that I see on Twitter. So at this point, like for me, this conversation is much more like bringing me back down to how real people are, because you see the extremes so damn much on the internet, and
Oh yeah.
exacerbated by people's entertainment news shows. That it's like, okay, let me talk to someone. I'm gonna bet. Like I would have bet before we even got on. I was like pretty sure I know where Bryan is. I'm not sure he's gonna self-identify as a leftist. And then you're like, you are. I'm like, okay, cool. And we're still rolling
Yeah.
along, and we're having a good
That's the thing.
conversation.
I really hate self-identifying myself ever, because I don't like when I say I'm a leftist. A lot of people take that to mean like, oh, there are some certain views that I hold that I refuse to balk on.
Well, yeah.
And
Well,
for me,
it's
that's not
it's
the
it's
case.
it's where you
All
end up
my decisions are
categorizing
based
yourself.
off of.
Yeah, it's where
Yeah.
you end up categorizing.
So I say it more so for how people would categorize me.
Yeah,
You would look at me and you would see the things I believe and what I think is right and wrong, and you would say, okay, so you're a leftist,
yeah,
generally speaking.
yeah.
Personally, I just look at it as I go on, issue by issue. Which one do I think is right? And that's where I vote. Back in high school, I used to say that that I wasn't a leftist. I wasn't on the right. I wasn't on the left. I was just being real.
Yeah.
Because it's like I don't care about the teams. The teams are the problem. Fuck the teams. And I'm saying this to everyone right now. If you plan to vote Democrat or you plan to vote Republican just because you are a Democrat or a Republican, you are the problem.
Yeah.
Find the policies, find the things you want them to do, and vote based on that.
Yeah.
Period. End of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the we especially in the United States. I feel like you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. It's really an entitlement problem. That's the issue. There's
Well,
too
it's
many
funny
people in this country that are
because
so fucking entitled.
so and I think now we got time. I think there's actually a very unfortunate thing where a lot of Americans feel very entitled, and it's not the millennial generation. Like
No, not at all.
it's actually I think there was someone, and I have yet to like give it good credence or whatnot, but I think it was a generation of sociopaths where this guy basically run that um, the boomer generation and the generation maybe right after that are actually a bunch of sociopaths or effectively sociopaths, so to speak, and they're actually the ones that are the most entitled because of they went through an age where everything had such a rapid development in technology and ease of life that they just started expecting it. And our
Hmm.
generation is the first one to reach like the peak of that in the 90s, and then shit crashes in '08,
Yeah,
and now we're just like now we have these linguistics or I forget what etymological, I don't know, we have these
yeah.
linguistic differences in how we even do customer service. I imagine you know
Oh,
which
oh yeah,
the
100%.
Tumblr post that I'm talking about where um, the older generation would say my pleasure or you're welcome or something like that when providing service, and now millennials or whatnot and likely zoomers at this point would say no problem, and it's because it's a very different perception that I
Hmm.
think goes into even a cultural social situation where before the providing of service was seen as that person didn't have to do that, but now
Yeah,
because of how customer service is and how dignity has gone out the door for people and companies are choosing to hire cowards and leaders and leadership isn't actually encouraged. So now it is very much understood that in a customer service environment, I have to do whatever you want to say. So when I say no problem, it is much more me saying, I actually like you and I'm okay doing this. It was not actually a burden to me, even though it is.
yeah, yeah. We look at being kind as expected. You're
Yeah.
expected to be kind. That's the basic, like the customer, the basic level customer service most people get is expected, and we view in all of our interactions.
Yeah.
For the boomer generation, they view it as like it's expected of you because it's your job. You're required to do.
Well, that's what they put
You
on
know?
us. Before, like that kind of
Yeah,
customer
that's what. Yeah,
service
that's what I'm
wasn't
saying.
it wasn't an expectation. So it's like my pleasure is like I'm very happy to actually help you because it had a much more giving situation. There's a scarcity mindset that I think is like its own, you know, PTSD so to speak from the '08 and how that affected a lot of people, and also how like basic human dignity in these companies has gone out the door because truth just dies. Like truth is not
Yeah.
of concern, and people won't stand up to the Karen bullies in any form.
Yeah,
And
it's actually quite funny because even like specifically talking about it like from a business perspective, I think that I've said it to you before that my degree is in business. I might not have. I don't know. But my degree is in business, and one of the things they teach us pretty early on is the like, no, the customer is not always right.
yeah,
That phrase came from somebody, like the more like expanded version of that phrase
hmm
is that the customer's always right that there is a problem, but the customer is almost never right on how to fix the problem.
yeah, I actually like
That
that. It reminds me of another phrase. What is it? It's like it's like blood's thicker than water or something like that. Um, blood of the covenant or something like that. That phrase.
the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the body. I think.
Something like that. Yeah, family or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that turn of phrase. Um,
I believe it's a Catholic phrase. Is the reason
yeah,
why it's coming to mind for me. But I think it's supposed to
blood
say
of
that the
the
blood of the covenant between you and Jesus Christ is more powerful than the water, quote unquote, that is in your veins to your family.
yeah, blood is thicker than water. Um,
Could be wrong though. That could be. I could have just got that from my grandparents. That's not actually true.
yeah, I'm trying to get actually just the full phrase, but Wikipedia is not helping me. Um, but yeah, so I
Oh,
really
the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Is what it is.
yeah yeah
It's a Bible quote. Is
yeah
what
yeah
this is
yeah.
telling me.
You know, I've read the entire Bible at least like once or twice in my entire childhood. Before I turned 18, basically, I'm pretty sure, and I can't say that I remember that verse.
Oh yeah, fuck if I know. It might be in like a specific like version of the Bible where like someone put that in because it's a real flowery version of what was actually said. For
It's
all I know, I have no idea. That's not. It's just it's a quote I've
it's a
heard used before,
proverb
specifically around my
by
religious
the
family.
German poet, believed to originate from a medieval German poet, Heinrich der Glitzenzeier, and I don't know how to pronounce that.
That's a
Um,
fantastic last name.
well, that's where I think there's things that are like they are shortened in quote, and the customer service is the best example because in my mind, when I'm sitting there thinking back to our retail days, I'm like, if you actually had managers that shut down abusive customers, it would become very clear to your employees that you back them and you support them.
Oh, yeah,
Because there's variant problem solvings to where you just let them get it out and get rid of them, or you just get rid of them forever. And it's like I'm not dealing with this. I'm not dealing with a disrespectful environment where my people are miserable.
yeah.
Because that's what
And
was
that's
so great.
like I was saying that's something that like is taught in business school nowadays. Is that like you should not actually like just give customers anything they ask for. Like
Yeah,
you need to put your foot down. The when you have a customer who's ruining the environment for your other customers, it is literally a more profitable decision to tell that customer to go fuck themselves and deal with that fallout
yeah,
in order to make an actually inviting environment both for your employees and for your other actual customers.
yeah. Well, I this is where I think there's a lot of old knowledge from like that I just think got thrown out with these overemphases on certain concepts, principles, whatever from whether it's from university, business school, or whatnot. There's a lot of principles that got overinflated, and they just created these very toxic work environments and relationship dynamics that aren't actually helpful, profitable, or anything. Um,
I view it. I feel like a lot of it comes from the separation between the worker and management. That we have such a large gap between those who are making the decisions and those who have to act on those decisions,
mhm.
that they see those complaints as actual complaints when they're not actual complaints,
Well, that's
right?
where I feel that as a management versus leadership difference. I feel that management just sees the problem and wants the quick fix, while leadership will actually like play a proper investigation and trust their employees to be like to problem solve their way through it, or reckon with the part where it's like this is something that is outside my ability, or this is an unwinnable situation because the customer is making it unwinnable.
Yeah, and that's honestly that. There's something I really want to go back to school and end up getting like a doctorate in like macroeconomics or whatever,
Hmm.
because I believe that so having worked for Publix for however long, I actually believe that the founding principles of that company is very close to what is actually like the correct way to run a business,
Oh
and
yeah,
like to
well
like
yeah,
run
when they
like
were
an invincible business.
yeah when
They fucked up a little bit because they went too far towards
debt.
the huh? No, the
Okay,
what's the word I'm looking for? The
customer's always right.
kind of, but no, it's they changed too much to be what is the establishment, like what is the established, this is how a business runs,
Hmm.
which included that the customer's always right, all that kind of stuff. They changed, back in the day though, like the actual things that Mr. George or whatever put forth, I think those are all
That's what
like
I
the
found in the
actual
orientation.
ideas.
Since we're revealing like where we used to work basically at this point. Um, uh, that's where when in the orientation I sat there watching the principles with which Mr. George founded Publix, and I was going, these are because I had a general business understanding, but like like an associate's at that point. But I was like watching all this, going, this all makes total sense. Like
See,
this
I
makes
was the opposite. I came into
ridiculous
the
sense.
company. I came into the company. I learned all that stuff, and then I went to school, and the stuff they were teaching is also very close to those things that
Yeah.
were in that original. But they've moved away from so much of that. Because the way I look at it, if you ask me, I think that the future of businesses in this country is going to be worker co-ops. I don't feel like the traditional business model works anymore, specifically because of issues of scalability. So you have a business, right?
Hmm.
Give me a product. What's a product someone could be selling?
Uh,
A product or a service?
tape.
Tape. There is a finite total demand for tape in the world.
Hmm.
Period. Just and that'll go for basically any product and most services. Most products and most services. Obviously, people are always going to have like a demand for food or whatever, and that's a recursive demand that will constantly be like you only need so much food during a day, but every day you need so much food. So it's a recursive demand. But you could conceivably produce all the tape the world will ever need for the next 2,000 years. It's physically possible. So a tape business only has a certain height that it can actually expand to. It can't
Mhm.
get bigger than that. There's a hard, and that's if you do everything perfectly. There is still a hard cap on demand.
Yeah.
And I feel like with how much advanced technology is and how large our companies are in this day and age, that a lot of companies have hit that point, and now they're looking for other ways to cut costs, and because they're still in this mindset that growth is necessary to be successful as a business,
Mhm.
where it isn't. It isn't necessary to be successful as a business. To be successful as a business, you just have to pay all your employees enough so that they can continue to live, right? You have to
Well,
be
I
able to
think I
pay
think you have
your
to.
overheads.
I
You
think
have to
that's
make some amount of money,
y-
but like
yeah.
you can't.
You have to have just enough profitability to make it worth it, and I think that comes and that's and because I'm not going to overemphasize profit as the major thing, but if a company doesn't have any amount of profit, then the reason for the company to exist falls apart. And
Kind of, but like again, like we're talking about tape. People need tape. People
yeah,
still
people
need
do need
tape.
tape. Yeah, it's about it.
Like,
Yeah, there is the providing of the service, but and that comes down to can you provide the need at a profit? That's the basic reason why a one man business would even entertain the
but
idea of meeting that need.
can you meet the need at a profit is
Hmm.
fine. The problem is, can you continue to meet that need at an ever increasing profit? That is the
No,
issue. And that's where a lot of
that's where that
companies get
doesn't work
lost.
out. That's where I think
Because like
we
you look at like Disney just keeps buying more media companies. They just
yeah.
keep buying them because you we've already reached the finite demand for princess movies. We have enough of them. There's a lot. We don't. No one's crying out there for like the eighth princess movie of the year.
Yeah.
So they're buying other stuff. All right, well now we're also going to be making the Star Wars movies, so we can take that profit and put it under our umbrella. But they haven't actually grown Disney the company. They've just taken Lucasfilm the company and stapled it on
Yeah.
to Disney, and they're saying it's the same company, and the company's grown.
Yeah.
So I feel like there is, and I want to do this study. I want to actually, because there's like no information about this. I feel like a worker co-op system where there's still like a hierarchy, but that hierarchy is significantly flattened,
Hmm.
and increased profits for the company means increased pay for everyone. Is actually the way to go for businesses that are much less likely to be affected by like market changes, and that are much more stable, and provide a healthier and more robust economy. But it's something that
Well,
would need to do the studies
well,
on. I could
that's
just look at the
okay. So this sounds to well, because the initial idea of a company is that a group of people come together for the same purpose, so to speak. Like that's the initial old school definition of a company. It's changed
yeah
drastically in the last several hundred years, so to speak. But what you're signing up with this work co-op sounds similar to me in terms of the employee-owned company, i.e., like sort of Publix's idea and Wawa's kind
yes
of idea, and that's
yes
where
exactly
I held this back then during the hiring process. I looked at their system and went, the employee owned company, like that principle of how their stock is held, is the backbone of this entire company. And
hmm
it's the only reason Publix hasn't fallen apart and turned into the worst version of Walmart before Publix redefined and has redefined how Walmart's going to hold itself at a higher quality. Um, is that the backbone of the stock ownership plan held it, even though Publix has fallen apart into this fear-based, fear-driven, no knowledge, don't care about your knowledge, don't care about your skills, don't care about whether or not you're good enough for leadership, and like and that's like those are the things that would actually make them fall apart. But I think the stock ownership is like held it, and now it's affecting the rest of the retail industry in a mildly positive way. And
yeah
so
because
I think you're on the right track with the worker co-op, or at least like employee owned only, because
yeah because
so
that's I want to be clear too, because when I say worker co-op, that's just kind of like the model that exists that we've seen do stuff that kind of works.
yeah, yeah.
I don't necessarily know as of right yet whether or not it's going to be like full worker co-op 100%, or like bring it back a little bit, because there are also scalability issues with worker co-ops in
Yeah.
terms of how large they can
Well,
get before it stops really being a worker
so
co-op.
this is going to go into a less economic area in terms of where your study line of study will go. But Simon Sinek has been one of my mentors I've never met. I don't know if you've heard of him. Um,
No, unfortunately not.
Okay, well, he's the guy going around basically bringing in the concept of the golden circle. He's the one with asking why, or at least finding your why, which is kind of this ambiguous idea of finding your where you would find meaning, so to speak, or why, or like what is like kind of a life goal of yours per se. And this is a very ambiguous description of what he describes much better in his books. So What he highlights is that um, GE or whatnot brought in, or had an accountant that brought in the idea that the shareholders became the main focus and the main priority of public companies. And that's where the entire concept of caring about the customer and your employee and your vendors went out the fucking door. And then we end up in
Yep.
this, we actually end up creating this greed culture that has led into what is the worst part of America these days. Now, you and I can agree that in the, at least as it would appear, in terms of George, his founding, and the three things that he cared about, the customer, the employee, and his vendors, that clearly takes care of your foundational pieces. And Costco versus GE, if you bought both at Costco's IPO, you'd have gotten like a decent return on your investment in GE, but you'd have gotten like a several hundred more percent in return on your investment from Costco, because Costco has that gradual increase on its stock value, while GE has this roller coaster crazy effect that's been lauded as a good, healthy look for a fucking stock when it's just bullshit.
Yeah, more or less.
So I think that if you want to try a different structure, go for it. But I think that there is a cultural thing that's now being rebuffed with Simon Sinek as one of the faces of it, to where you need to be focusing on your people and your employees, and we're seeing the pushback as well with like not letting your customers run your shit. But when you,
Yeah.
I'd sooner have an adjustment in the business culture to where the shareholder is not the primary concern, unless the shareholder also is the employee.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that entirely. The thing I'm saying is I don't know. There is somewhere between where we are right now and how we
Hmm.
do things and a full-on worker co-op where I think the happy medium lies. But
Yeah.
it's those ideas behind the worker co-op are basically all like the things that led to the creation of that business setup are
Hmm.
all the same ideas that led to the creation of Publix. And
Yeah.
Publix, again, I'm not to talk shit or not talk shit about Publix as they are right now. I'm just talking about them as they were back in the day. That specific way that they chose to go about things is why they're as successful as they are.
Yeah.
That worker owned, that we put our employees first
Yeah.
mentality is the reason that they are able to compete with a company like Walmart.
Well, and
So
that's where Costco is kicking the hell out of the Walmart equivalent Sam's Club, and that's where, because Costco still holds onto those values that Publix purported um, in their initial foundings, and Costco is showing great growth in terms of its stock value, and in terms of also the wages that it pays its employees. It's well above the minimum wage expectation.
yeah, but I feel like that's like I'm saying that's what we need to go towards, and I feel like that's where we're just going to see it happen like in the next
Oh
20
yeah,
to
no, this is
25 years
like
because it's going to be again like I said it's so many of these companies are reaching this like potential maximum demand
hmm
where they cannot expand anymore that something's going to happen. Either one, the bubble's going to burst and this company's going to come crumbling down because
yeah.
they're trying to juggle too many different plates.
Well, it's a Tower of
Um,
Babel situation.
yeah, oh
It's
yeah,
really, it's a Tower of Babel situation. Like, and that's where actually it's Jordan Peterson that says it, but I think Simon would agree. It's like you can't go through the '08 crisis and people be saying, and companies be saying we're too big to fail. It's like no, 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 so big you must fail. You will fail. Like you cannot
yeah,
get so fucking big to think like it's Rome basically. You can't get that fucking big and expect to be able to keep it together.
yeah.
Like
It's just not possible. It's not feasible.
yeah, that's where like it might be a sociocultural thing, but like there's reasons that there are traditional cultures that have lasted for thousands and thousands of years because they've kept themselves tight knit and very minimalist in how they sort of like live off the land, live off the fat of the land basically, and have their oral traditions that have lasted for thousands and thousands of years because they just never got that fucking big that they end up
Yeah,
collapsing and speaking other languages and stuff.
I feel like that's a little bit. It's a little bit harder to draw that connection between like countries and companies, just because they're. I guess you can make an argument that a
I'm running
government
on
is similar to a
it's a very
company, but
macro.
they're doing such
I'm running
different
yeah, I'm
things.
running on a very macro principle, but you can agree that there's a different culture inside every company. Like, and
Kind of.
these are very broad strokes here. These are very broad strokes here. Like a company
I
versus
would I
like
would
how a
say
village.
there's a different culture amongst individuals within a company, but I do feel like most companies are large enough to the point where it's not really you can't really have a cohesive corporate culture anymore. They try. They absolutely try. And like you look at places like Publix, and they're the people who you pull the boat. They're the ones who get to make that culture decision, and you got to fall in line with it, or you get kicked out.
Mm.
But like I do also feel like that is also a negative to a company, because like the um especially like because if we want to talk about it more so like in terms of like countries and whatever, you look at a country like Japan. Japan's very insular. Japan culturally, they're very much, we're all in this together, like what we're talking about. But Japan is also falling apart right now because they're not able to actually keep their birth rate competitive because they don't have enough new people coming into Japan.
Mm.
Japan has this weird situation where they need immigrants and they're looking for them.
Yeah.
They're like they
Well,
have like there's a whole bunch of programs to like teach English in Japan just because they're like, hey, we really need people here, and this is a good skill. So hey, please,
Well,
please come here.
they've had this very interesting situation in a human demographic area where they can't meet their birth rate because of how I think their culture and their technology has gotten so far that the value in human connection and human relationships and family, at least like at a minimum the classic nuclear family has just fallen away. And so now they're
That's the thing. I would disagree with that entirely because Japan never had a classic nuclear family. It's Japan. Their family system was very different than our family system, and their family system is still like in
was
large
it the
part.
what's the difference? Because a classic nuclear family would be like mother, father, and kids in one household.
Yeah, mother, father, kids, pet, and picket fence, all in the same
Yeah,
household.
yeah, yeah.
Japan is very different, at least historically.
It's like
I
three
think
generations
post
in one
World War
house.
II, not necessarily three like specifically, but multiple generations living under the same house.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
most countries over there, they view, even though like nowadays their religions are very different, ancestor worship is still a very important thing for them. So both in China and Japan, like living with your relatives is completely common, and having multiple generations living under the same roof up
yeah,
until like the past 50 years was extremely common. If
yeah.
anything, the transition towards a more nuclear family style of setup is kind of what's causing them so much issues, because all what we're seeing is the same. Like once a country gets to the point of development, up to a certain point of development where having children no longer is like beneficial to your survival, birth rates drop off. You look at countries like India or Africa, a lot of those really, really high birth rates are because one of these kids is going to be successful and take care of the rest of us, is the hope.
Yeah.
You just keep having kids because there is no other option, right? Because you're so poor and you're so old and you have so many kids that you're going to be stuck in your place forever unless one of your kids makes it out. That's why they have so many kids. But then you come to a country like the United States, so that's really not the case. Where like, yeah, it's much easier if you have a large family, but it's not necessary. And once that is no longer like an impetus, like to survive, it drops down significantly. And then you have like the one child or two child households. That's why most first world countries actually enter like a population decline after a certain point. It's just because people have less reason to have kids, not necessarily because
Well,
the social structure changed.
the need for kids for just being able to get one that's going to survive, in terms of the
Yeah,
medical health revolution goes out the door, and then
yeah, because when
as
you know every single one of your kids is going to survive to adulthood, it becomes
yeah, well, and then
it's much less likely.
well, then contraception, family planning, a certain level of income equals the ability to actually plan it out,
Yeah,
um, and then that's where you end up with just people making their one, two child decisions, and that's kind of where that goes. Um, yeah. I'm really curious to see if you actually go PhD and actually get a good thesis out for identifying like a different a perhaps a at least identifying research or differences in company structures that equal uh, a better employee environment, I guess.
yeah. I
I
mean,
think
it's
it's more
something
I think it's a more cultural thing, and that's something that you can at least people things. The thing that I remember it now. I think the thing that Simon points out, and I think this is where we have a really dumb situation in terms of how companies do their interview process or do their talent acquisition, is that they don't understand um, their core values and even what they believe as a company and like what they like really care about and believe and focus on, and so they don't go that deep or that hard into evaluating candidates to work for them. And because in Simon's idealistic world, as he would identify it, if you're adopting if you're hiring someone, you should be treating it as if you're adopting them into your company. And so you should be taking that hiring process as seriously as you would an adoption. Um, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here,
Yeah.
and I think that's fair. I mean, it's it's one of those things where I just don't. It's the issues are systemic. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like there can be an argument made for changing the culture to the point where then we no longer believe that those systemic issues are acceptable, and then we change those systemic issues. But like I prefer to focus on achievable, like more. Not I don't mean to say that
I
because
think I
that
think I think
sounds
you want to be the
insensitive,
shield and I
but
want to be the I think you want to be the shield and I want to be the hammer, and we're just
I
trying to
just
attack
I
this.
want to identify what the problem is,
Mm-hmm.
what the best solution is, and go for it. I don't think that the small changes, like the small cultural whatever, the way I like to look at it is I try to look at it the way Dr. Martin Luther King looked at it when he wrote that the letter from
The
the
jail,
jail. I can't
Birmingham
remember
jail.
exactly what it's
Yeah.
called. Yeah, the Birmingham jail, um, where the people who are the problem are not the opponents. The people who are the problem are the ones who are saying, well, let's just wait. You know,
Yeah.
like the ones who are like, oh well, we can wait to fix it. Oh, well, we can take this slow. Like if there's a problem that we can fix, just fix the problem. Like
Yeah.
the culture, to me, the culture will follow. If we solve the problems, the culture will follow. If
Mm-hmm.
we make education accessible and we fix the systemic issues that keep it from chasing it, the culture will follow.
Mm-hmm.
If we fix getting the money out of politics and actually like have a voting system where every vote is equal, the culture will follow. But the problem is that those cultures are so much harder to change when you have those systemic issues in the way of it.
I think
It's
you.
so difficult to fix how corrupt our politicians are when the system encourages them to be corrupt. You know
I
what I mean?
I feel like it's interesting. I think we can close it with this last concept because we gotta get ready for our workout here in 30 minutes. Um, have you heard of the argument between the constrained and unconstrained, I believe it's called, mindsets or viewpoints?
It sounds familiar, so I might have heard of something similar, but I've not heard it described
If I
that
can,
way.
I'm gonna try to look this up. If I might butcher this. Um, I think the constrained mindset. Yeah, the constrained mindset, I believe, would like Adam Smith or a Federalist paper writer would be someone that would look at it. A constrained mindset would say, let's set up um, rules or whatnot in society that punish or provide consequence to the worst natures in human beings. Um, Otherwise, let them be free. In the unconstrained mindset, um, as it was sort of as I kind of remember it being described, is believing that you can actually change human nature to create a more perfect society, so to speak. I need to look up a better definition series. But it almost sounds like you actually and so an unconstrained mindset would typically be, I believe, associated with a more liberal mindset, and a constrained mindset would be more associated with a conservative mindset. But it sounds to me, and I might be clearly misunderstanding these concepts. It's very likely. It almost sounds like you are a constrained mindset person who happens to be a liberal in terms of where you are in the political spectrum, so to speak, or more liberal leaning, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I mean, based on the way you've described it, that's entirely possible. That's
Mm-hmm.
not something I've ever necessarily looked at myself, and that's not necessarily the way I like to look at it because I don't like to look at it from a like oh, the problems will fix themselves sort of a deal. I think we need to go fix the problems. I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like the systemic issues are harder to fix
Mm-hmm.
than cultural issues
Mm-hmm.
because the culture, if you people just we are products of our environment at the end of the day,
Yeah.
period, end of the
Yeah.
story.
Well.
You can create a killer, you can make a murder, that's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Those aren't things that generally speaking any of us would do or would want to do, but you can give someone the environment that forces them down that road.
Well.
So the
That's.
way I look
Yeah.
at it is that it's easier to solve the cultural issues, whatever they may or may not be, as long as we make sure the systemic issues are fixed.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is I advocate for the path of least resistance. If there's a big rock in the road and a bunch of trees off to the side of the road, it's going to be easier to get rid of that big rock in the road than cut down a bunch of trees and make your way around it. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
No.
And that's the systemic versus the cultural. There
Yeah.
definitely are cultural issues, especially in this country, but they'll be so much easier to fix once the systemic issues are dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
Because the systemic issues help enforce and perpetuate those cultural issues.
Well, I think that's where there's a interplay between the culture that's created by the system and the culture that tries to exist, but the system just ruins it basically. And that's where I think we're both agreeing on that quite strongly in terms of any good cultures. Because an example that I do appreciate that Simon Sinek provides is with GE, where the CFO or whatnot creates that bottom 10% gets fired, and the accounting the accounting side of that just like gets turned to shit basically, or just gets turned into this very dog eat dog hyper competitive situation where no one looks out for each other. And even the guy that created it by the end of his tenure was like the accounting side of GE was just vicious and malevolent practically. And it's like, well, you created a system where you must be, top 80% to survive and to keep your job. You created this hyper competitive situation that that's just not conducive to a forward looking company, so to speak, of people. So I can definitely get with you on finding the problem, and the problem can definitely be a system in place that encourages the worst in people.
Yeah, and that's another important thing to mention, to like specify, is that a lot of it, like if I'm talking about like why those are the things that I focus on or whatever, that's not to say that other things aren't also problems. It's just to explain my reasoning on why I focus on those specific problems.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? Because it's like because like you can have a problem where like obviously we have a cultural issue in the United States where we are at, and again we talked about it earlier, where the boomers, the zoomers, whatever, you can talk about who is and who isn't entitled, but we have an entitlement issue in this
yeah,
country, like just period, we
yeah,
have one.
yeah,
So I just happen to think that it's easier, obviously it's easier to tell people, hey, stop being entitled, but it's easier to get them to actually change their behavior when the system is changed and that behavior is now disincentivized.
yeah,
Like that the Karen law or whatever they recently passed, where it's like, hey, if you call the cops for something and it's not an actual issue that the cops should be called for, you're gonna get fucked. I
mm.
think that's perfectly fair. Don't waste the police's time. I
Well,
don't like, because like I've got a lot of law enforcement, and
mhm.
we obviously we're close to the you got to go, so I don't want to get into that whole spiel.
Well, you're
But
reminding
like,
me of
no cop wants to be called to the fucking grocery store because you got in an argument over about wearing a mask. No cop wants to have to fucking deal with that.
So check this out. You can look him up and you can see if you like him or not. But Larry Elder, I watched one of his interviews on his movie that he just produced called Uncle Tom. He's a black conservative who was on talk radio or whatnot. The So he brought up this example where it was like L.A. or whatnot, and the body cam came into play, and what ended up happening. I wish I could actually quote the stats. Um, Basically, the body cams came into play, and they were left on. They were not turned off for any of those fishy bullshit situations, and the amount of negative interactions or bullshit accusations coming from the populace, from the civilian population, fell off massively. And
Yeah,
his conclusion out of it that he drew had far more to do with when people know they're going to be on camera, they're not going to lie their faces off to cops because of whatever injustice or bullshit they want to spin in the situation. Because now it's all captured. Because what ends up happening, as he put it, is that the cop's going to show up and do and the training is going to go into play. They're going to go by what they're trained to do, and then the civilian is basically going to have to react to either reacts to the body cam and going, oh, I can't run bullshit here because it's going to be able to be used against my case basically, if I'm lying my ass off, so to speak.
yeah,
So the body cam actually ends up like protecting cops, and I think I'm gonna guess. I wish I could find that clip. I think the violent altercations went down with cops, with like civilians like physically interacting with cops, like went down or something like that. Because now
oh,
the
yeah.
footage is out there.
I mean those, what is it, eight can't wait or whatever, the eight that can't wait, those eight specific policy changes that people wanted, we're pushing for with the police.
Uh-huh.
Every single one of those is literally mathematically proven to be better for everyone, including the police. The only reason that like I'm not even like, it's not even like an, like you can make arguments for some of them, but like it's the numbers are out there, we've had them for a while.
Yeah.
It's just that the the constant problem is that even our police system is set up in a way where there's a profit motive. They make money off of being police officers. They make money off of doing the stuff that they do. So yeah, of course that's gonna, they're gonna want that huge budget, because that huge budget is going to the people who work in that police office.
Mm.
So they don't want those budgets to be cut. They don't want, even if that budget's way too big. So you end up getting a whole bunch of like mixed goals
Hmm.
where like you've got the police acting against their own interest, and it's like I don't understand it. But
Yeah. Well, I think we could dive into police unions and that argument later, but we need to get going. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for coming on to JHP. I think we should do this again.
yeah, absolutely, man. My schedule is absolute garbage, so I don't know when we'll be able to do it again, but I'd always be happy to.
Oh yeah, no, this has been good. This has been calming, ironically, uh, to have a rational conversation with someone who's got a lot of shit in their head, or at least got a lot of information in their head. I'll say instead of just
No, no, I
banter.
think shit was right. I think I don't.
All right, man, fantastic. Thank you again. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll catch you next time.